waiting, I'm just filling time. We're up, I see, I got it.
Or not, just
Okay.
reminding him.
I'm calling this meeting, the Rockport Select Board, to order for
7
Monday,
o'clock.
August 8th. The first order of business, and I would ask that if you have a cell phone, please mute it. And if you want to take a call or make a call, would you please step all the way outside, because we hear every word that's said there in the vestibule. So the first thing on our agenda is the approval of the minutes. We have before us the minutes from Monday, July 25th, and I would entertain a motion to accept.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded.
Discussion,
For discussion, do we have any changes?
page 5.
Page 5.
I'm pretty sure that you said would like to make a recommendation and discuss what message the board wants to send. Introduce the word message in there.
I'd like to make a recommendation and discuss what message. Yes. Yes, that is correct. Under, the first part, under item B on that page. Do we have any others? No? Hearing none, I'll call for approval as amended. All in favor? That is unanimous. So a couple of announcements here, very briefly. The next regular select board meeting will be Monday, August 22nd, 7 p.m. here at the Opera House, and it will be live streamed. I have on the agenda that we might have a special meeting of the select board on Thursday, August 11th. That is going to be dependent upon what comes out of the Midco Solid Waste meeting on Wednesday, August 10th. So that may or may not happen, and if it doesn't happen, it'll be a last-minute decision. Some announcements. As I just said, there's a special meeting of the Midco Solid Waste Corporation Board on Wednesday, August 10th, here, 6 p.m. That is to continue the discussion of what to do with our municipal solid waste come April 1st, 2018. As many of you already know, the town clerk's office has been relocated to the Richardson Room. Signs are out there directing you to where to go. We hope to have all that work completed by the end of the month. And I saw you roll your eyes just a moment ago. They started in right on very bright and early, August 3rd, right after the election. So there's also going to be a board and committee tune-up by the town attorney. This is in lieu. Normally we do a Freedom of Access Act briefing. This is going to be a little more intensive than this. This is intended for board chairs and vice chairs, as well as members of the quasi-judicial committees and the select board, and how to run meetings, how to prepare for them, etc. I'm not going to move on. Yes,
Just before you
go
go
ahead.
off that topic, I don't mean to not include other committee members who would like to come. There's a lot of really good information there, so any committee member who would like to attend that is certainly welcome to. You get a lot of good information.
So, and please do come. Committee openings are listed in the agenda for this evening, so I'll skip ahead then to agenda changes. Owen?
I move to have the committee application for John Titus be inserted in the regular spot under new business number, or letter C, committee applications.
Second.
Second?
Second.
Any, Jeff?
Yeah, no, I'm
all in
on
favor?
flavor.
No,
Chocolate.
okay.
Flavor?
Chocolate.
He's in flavor.
You
All
brought-
right,
brought
public
something?
comment. Public comment should be directed at issues not under discussion on this evening's agenda. Comment from the public will be welcome prior to each agenda item. Further comment will be granted only by permission from the board. All public comment should be brief and to the point. Do we have anyone wishing to make public comment this evening on items not on our agenda? Nope. All right. Town manager, oh, yes.
Prior to the town manager's report, we mentioned in passing an election. Can we say anything official about that election? Like how many people voted and who won it?
All right.
To
I
the,
didn't
to
know
the
if
woman
he
who
was
doesn't
gonna-
have a microphone? Oh, unless you put it in your report.
No, I did not.
Okay.
Okay.
You want me to stand up?
Yeah, if you don't mind. It's kind of important. It's an election.
The election we had on August the 2nd, we had a total of 84 people vote. 2 of those were absentee ballots. Betsy Saltonstall won with 45 votes, and that was for the school board director.
Thank you.
And I do have to follow that up by saying it's really good that 85 people went out of their way on a totally irregular day to do that. I think it's really fine.
Yeah, yeah, applaud those that did show up. Any other items before we move to the manager's report? We will move to the manager's report.
Pictures to that thing we could have.
Oh,
Lightning
Oh.
fast.
that would be cool, wouldn't
That
it?
would be cool. Next time.
Yeah, next time.
Yeah, we're moving real quick here tonight.
You'll notice that my manager's report has complete with pictures in the hope that a picture says 1,000 words and I won't have to talk so much. So the infrastructure projects are proceeding. They're doing what we need them to do, but they're going slowly, as Jan, I'm sure, can attest. But we're hitting a lot more ledge than we expected in a bunch of places, so that's taking up some time. But you'll notice they've started the work on the Summer Street stairs on the bottom, and I believe they delivered all the curbing today for the sidewalk that's gonna go in. So that's, we're proceeding along. It's slow in both cases, both school and, as Jeff can attest, Summer Street and School Street is going slowly, but they're proceeding. Mill Street Bridge is on track after that slow start, but they're going along very well. While the lack of rain isn't good for everybody, it's good for this project because the water table is down, so it means that we can get this project done, and it's going along very well. And you'll see the picture there. It's quite a sizable project when you get all done. Jeff just recommended that if I'm gonna put these in my manager's report, we can have them up on the screen so people can see them as well, and people at home can see them. The West Street sidewalk extension, if you notice, that's started last week, last Thursday, I think, or Wednesday or Thursday. Everybody thinks we're building an off-ramp off of Route 1 onto West Street, but it actually is the sidewalk because of the elevation change. It has to be pretty wide to start, so that's moving along. The plan is to get that done so that when they come in, when the state comes in to re-signal the intersections, that they'll be able to our part will be completed, and they'll be able to re-signal and put the crosswalk in on the landing pads to get that done. And then the vestibule, painting and new carpets, that's proceeding along very well. Thank you to the town clerk, tax collector's office crew for getting everything packed up, and the public works crew for moving everything, getting it all moved so quickly. And amazingly, I don't think anything got broken. No, didn't break anything, which is a pretty amazing thing for moving all that stuff, and they were pretty well moved in after the first day, and then the second day was just making sure all the pieces all worked, because there's a lot of technology that has to move, so that all got done. As you know, we've been putting this part of the project off for a little bit so that we could tie a bunch of pieces together and do them all at once. So we're doing the vestibule project, the painting and carpeting, and also replacing all the desks, which we got a grant for to help last year.
I have a question on that, Rick, if I may.
Yep.
So it says new economics requirements. So can that get projected? Does that have to happen with every place that we have town employees, meaning the harbor masters, public works?
That's where we're working through the
Starting at the
high-risk
town
places.
office.
Yeah, the people that sit at desks all the time and do all of, that's all they do.
Yep.
Is trying to meet those ergonomic requirements.
Are they the cool get up, get down?
No,
desks?
not that, it's not that kind of desk.
Okay.
But it's, I don't understand, personally, I don't understand the ergonomic stuff, but, they come in, they measure, they take measurements, and we get a grant from MMA to help with the cost,
Okay.
so. And thank you to to Phi Homes and Cascade Foundation. Cascade is paying for the vestibule, and also, and Phi Homes gave us a really good price. Basically, the cost of, there's no profit in their price. Their price was about half what most of the bids were, simply because they just wanted to do something good for the community. So thank you to Cascade and Phi Homes. And you'll see a picture in here of them moving all the furniture. It was not an easy move, but we got it done. And so it's been a little bit of a challenge, but people will get used to it using the two different doors. We've got it, sort of got it down so that people will come in, go to the right office. Linda handles I'd say probably 90% of the people who come to town office are there to see Linda. And then the 10% are there to see everybody else, and less than 1% are there to see me. The rest are department heads, and they can find, the rest of the department heads, and they can find me, they knock on the window if they have to. And the Rockport 125th was a huge success, as we all know. It was finally, the final event was, last night was the bridge dinner, the jazz on the jazz in Marine Park, the bridge dinner, and the slideshow, which was a big hit. The bridge dinner was sold out, and amazingly, thank you, Ken, the weather was
Are you like a god now?
yeah, he is, yeah. And lastly, in our tradition of recognizing employees with long years of service, one of our employees, I don't know what the significance of the gift we give to everybody with long service, but Linda has reached a milestone of 20 years of service to the town of Rockport. 20 years of dedicated service to the town of Rockport. And I have to say, there are a few people that are there, you know, when I'm there in the morning, if Linda's not there by 7:20 in the morning, something's wrong. And typically when I'm leaving, you know, I'm saying, Linda, are you going home? You know, it's 5:45, 6 o'clock. Are you going home? Linda, when are you gonna go home? Linda, it's time to go home. So Linda has given us a lot of years of, given the town of Rockport a lot of years of really dedicated service, and so we're gonna recognize her and honor her tonight with a little gift, so.
Did you unwrap it?
Well,
Not a gift unless you unwrap it.
oh, wait, you want me to unwrap it?
We're gonna present it to her.
I don't know what to
Oh,
say.
I thought it was an inflatable mattress.
She can stay in the office.
In all seriousness, Linda, this is a true milestone, and the service you have put in over the years is just phenomenal. You've got a smooth running operation in there, and everybody's greeted with a smile. Even when they come in, why do I have to pay these taxes like this? You know, but we do want to thank you, and you know, they're you know, yeah, quite that nice clock.
Thank you.
It measures the time, so.
Thank you.
Linda, it's always great to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you kindly.
It is important to note, I think we do have a lot of employees that are at the end, a lot of years of longevity. I think our average is probably up in the teens.
Economics.
I think our average of employees is probably in the high teens, low 20s. When you look down the list, there's a lot of years at the top, and then there's a bunch of people new at the bottom, but there's not in the middle. So it's gonna be a little bit of a challenge as we move forward, but it's not one that we can't deal
We
with.
budget for all these clocks that we're gonna have to be giving out here.
I know.
in the next couple-
Coming out of your stipend.
Oh, good.
The clock
I
is-
don't think you have enough money in my stipend to pay for all
The
that.
clock is the smallest piece.
No, it is really good to see the longevity of our employees, because it says a lot for how they feel dedicated to the town and the citizens of the town. That otherwise, you know, what's the point of coming to work if you don't like to do it? and you don't like the people that you're working with. So I think that's a great thing. And you're right, that we do have a number, particularly like in Public Works, who've
Yeah,
been
Jimmy
here for a long
Aldis, I think
time.
Jimmy Aldis is what, 34, 36 years?
Somewhere in there,
He's up there.
He's up there, yeah,
yeah.
Longest
Yeah.
employees.
yeah.
Mhm.
And, you know, he was helping last night take down barricades and move stuff, you know?
Yeah, well, that's the people that we have. And it's
You know, and
really
Linda,
kudos do go out to everyone
Right.
on the town staff for the service that they provide to us. So,
good. Thank you, Linda. And that's my manager's report. See, less than 10 minutes.
wow, this is a record. Questions of the manager?
This is where it goes south.
I'm not
did
hearing a whole lot
Dostoevsky
here. I was just wondering, when could we expect to see a completion of school and Summer Streets, but,
Yeah, they're, I don't know.
I'm counting on before November, so that's fine.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, we'll be able to meet that.
we hope.
When's the high sidewalk start getting?
September, after Labor Day.
And they will be repaving Pascal, Central, and Union about the
Same time, yep.
Okay.
A lot of work.
Okay, we'll move on to the next item. I gotta flip my chart. We don't have any unfinished business and no public hearing this evening. The first item under new business is the application for committee service from John Titus, who is here tonight. I already met him outside as he was bringing his bike and putting it outside so he could come in here. John, would you step up to the microphone? We did just receive this application this evening, so I think we're gonna take a minute or two just to read it through.
Sure.
To familiarize ourselves.
And there is no recommendation from the chair of that committee. However, the chair and John are biking buddies, and I can not speak for Jeff Scott, but Jeff and I have talked about this. Both of us are very, very happy that John has put this application in.
And I should say, this is for the sidewalk, or the Pathways Committee.
Yes.
The Joint Camden Rockport Pathways Committee. And you use your bike for transportation, that's good to see.
Well, I have a car, but I
But that's
ride
for
a
the
lot,
winter,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, I do ride a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good to see that. Any questions from anyone?
Actually, I first pitched this to John because I pulled over on the side of the road to talk to him while he was biking. So I pitched the committee while he was biking.
Okay.
Just stop, or?
He did. He was very gracious.
I had to.
I
He
have
was-
little legs.
he was
He
walking
pulled
away.
over, block your way.
Yeah.
No, but I put my
He knocked me
four-ways
into
on.
the ditch,
It
and
was
I
like
had
a
to talk
police
to him.
stop.
Ken?
Nothing, I mean,
Oh.
I'm just reading, says you've already attended a meeting of the committee.
I
so
did,
you,
yeah.
Understand how they work.
Yeah.
At least to some extent.
Yeah, and I think I, could be effective there and bring a good voice to that
Well, I
committee.
spent a couple of years as a liaison to that committee, as did
As
Mr.
did-
Parker, so the majority of this board has served as a liaison to that committee at one time or another. They're a very hard-working group, and
Yeah,
to
Yeah,
have you
it was
be willing to
interesting to
join,
me.
that's great.
Jeff?
So I have a brother that was run over by a car, while bicycling, and I think anything that you could do, not to add to your plate, but anything the town could do to increase awareness that bikes are legitimate vehicles on the road and everything would be super,
yeah.
so.
Well, I think, because I ride for sport, but more for transportation, and I have for like my whole life, and I notice stuff, and I do have some ideas about, in general, I see things at intersections or whatever that I think, yeah, that's not good,
Right,
or,
right,
like things that could be fixed with a can of paint pretty easily, and
Well, that point of view will be important to the committee.
yeah, great.
John was already offering great thoughts. We were discussing Route 1 North and that whole thing in Camden. But it's great to have the perspective of someone who, we're trying to do it for the biking community, but I don't go out and bike all the time. So he's already saying, oh, naturally traffic calms when you see this, or this is a natural way to, you don't have to artificially lower the speed limit if you do these things. So John's already provided some good insight during the meetings.
Good.
Well, I make a motion to approve John Titus to the Pathways Committee for a term ending June 30th, 2018.
Second.
It moved, it's seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? John, thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
for your
you.
service.
Appreciate your service.
Thanks.
We will now move on to the next item under new business, and that is the presentation by the Ad hoc Library Planning Committee of their final recommendation and how they wish to set us on our direction.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
before we begin, I just, in the public comment section, it says public comment to be accepted before each agenda item, but I would
true.
suggest that in this case that we allow the chair of that committee to make the presentation, then
And then
entertain
take-
public comment at that point.
Yeah, that would be,
That would be preferable. That would be preferable. Okay, so it wasn't that long ago that I was here. So there are some things that have been tightened up, some things that are still loose, and we have kind of reached a point in our deliberations where it is time for us to sort of back off and let the fundraising begin and let the board take over for the warrant article, the bond, and so forth. But let me go through where we have settled on things and where we have not settled on things, and kind of why not. And I'm going to bounce around a little bit on these slides. The first thing that I want to say is that it's important for everybody to understand that the library is not the building that encloses it. The library is this: the floor plans, the programming, the flow of people, the materials that we can provide, the services that we can provide to people. And this two-story design has been accepted for quite some time now on our part as being the best building, the best set of circumstances that we can provide for the town now and going on into the future. And so this is the library. What I'm going to show you in terms of what things look like are still very kind of a little bit variable. The thing that matters here, the issues that are settled, is that we are going to use the historic library site. We're not using the park. We're going to rework on the park, but the building is going to go where the building has been. And these two factors, the site and the floor plans, that is the programming for the library, really determine the size and the massing of the building. The exterior of the building can still be flexible, but the basic size of the building and where it's going to go will remain as they are. This is long agreed to, and so we have certain things that we have agreed to. I'm going to use because I found my old laser pointer, and if it's working, I'm going to yes. Can I see anything? No, you can't see it.
No, because this is not a reflective
Because of the
surface.
what's the point? Okay, the things that we, which was
Good
fine.
effort, though.
It's fine.
Damn good effort.
A for effort, I
Yeah.
guess, yes. Okay, so we're going to be having, the building sits slightly different on the landscape, which allows us an area for a children's garden and a way down to the stream, which will be cleaned out, protected, obviously, and re-shrubbed and treed and so forth. And then the gardens, the park across the street is going to, the memorials will be brought up to the front. You can see new crosswalks that run across the park and take you from Union Street into the library entrance. But it also serves to isolate and make special the place where all the monuments will be gathered, and then the rest of the park will be devoted to being park space, and there'll be benches and Wi-Fi and all of that kind of stuff. So the overall things that have been determined are the kind of parking, which is going to be these 90-degree angle parking on Lime Rock Street, indented parkings, make it safer for people to open car doors on Union Street and Russell Street, a total of 24 spaces, plus drop-off areas handicap parking, book drop-off, people drop-off, and so forth. The traffic control plans that we have agreed on, shown here, to remove the island, which will settle some confusion. We can no longer have our Sunday morning in August entertainment going down to the park and watching the people from Massachusetts try and figure out how to turn. We're going to change that, and obviously with new signage, it'll make life a lot easier. New crosswalks. You can see that on where the building is going to be, the curb juts out some, providing extra green space. Those will be mountable curbs, as will the one in front of the Opera House on the opposite side of Russell Street, so that if a car makes a mistake, it will go up on the curb rather than damaging the car. But those are meant to slow down traffic a bit on Russell Avenue. We are going to recommend, for the moment, a kind of residential roof. Now, I'm not going to go into materials or anything like that, but the conversation that we had in the focus groups, and since that, with residents of the area and with people who are going to be potential fundraisers and so forth, is that the open space that the architects had shown, the floating roof that the architects had shown, while very interesting to a lot of people, make the building a little less neighborhood friendly, I think is the only way that I know how to describe it. And so that coming to a residential kind of roof, there is still room for some deck spaces up top. I'll show you when we get to floor plans. And to go to an all-brick exterior. One of the things that we got a lot of conversation on in the focus group was when we had a combination of brick and clapboard. People thought that they didn't go well together, that it was a kind of a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And we've decided on brick because it has a much better life expectancy, it has much less maintenance cost, it has a more civic feeling to it, a little more permanence to it. And frankly, this is a large building. It's a 9,000 square foot building, and if you do it in clapboard, it's not going to look like a cute New England house. It's a civic building and should look like a civic building. Now, what you're seeing here, the window treatments are not settled yet. This is simply one architect's possibility, but one of the things that we've been looking at are the bay windows on this side that faces Russell. Those bays, and I'll go to, if I can find it, the floor plan. Yes, if you look at the bay windows on top and bottom floors, they stick out about 6 feet, which would provide some nice comfy reading space and congenial space in there, as well as having a kind of a softening effect on the building. Now, they're not round glass. They are pieces of glass going around, so they're not terribly expensive to build or maintain. There are unsettled issues as well. One of the unsettled issues, go back to this, is we have been talking about traffic control on Lime Rock Street, and the drawing shows one-way entering from Union onto Lime Rock. It also shows Lime Rock as having been moved slightly away from Russell. The corner has been made larger. Oh. That one-way has not been discussed with any of the residents, which is one of the things that we need to do. It has not been discussed that thoroughly with the police and the fire and public works and so forth. But we are looking at it as a way of controlling the dangerous intersection. So my thought at this point is that up to the end of this 14-bay parking area, better seen here, the gray area on Lime Rock Street, up to the end of that parking area would be one way going up Lime Rock. The rest of Lime Rock would be two-way, so that when you left the parking, you would have to go out via Lime Rock and Hulse, but you could get into the parking either from Union or from Lime Rock Street. This is a conversation that needs to be had with people, but this is what we're looking at as our primary ideas for traffic control on Lime Rock, and that'll make it safer for pedestrians if cars are only coming from one direction, and it will slow things down. Another unsettled issue is how much money, if any, we will get from MDOT for traffic control on what is in effect a state road. We don't know yet. Another unsettled issue is exactly how accurate our estimates are. We think they're quite good, but there may be some changes. But there are coverages in the budgets for that. So the roof space. Let me go to roof space. Okay. So the roof shown here is with the residential roof. Over the reading room areas, there could be a cutout for a small balcony area there. Right now, the area over the children's section, which is the back right-hand wing, is not built with a roof on it, but rather is still flat. That will be solar panels. It may be another roof garden. All of these, it may be residential roof with a tilt to it. That's for us is getting into the weeds that the architects really need to be handling. But that still is in discussion. When we voted as a committee on whether or not to have the open roof space, it was a one-vote change between. So we've said there is no hard decision on this. This is still open for conversation. The architects have said this is not that significant at this point for making that. We're still going to come back with some new ideas. So there are possibilities for that yet. But it is. We're not going to go with the original design, which was a kind of a floating roof, open space that looked more hotel bar-like than library-like. You can see at the bottom part of the drawing, the roof is extended and there is a bay window. Whether or not there will be a bay window there is still under discussion. It's not a significant enough cost difference for us. We've asked the architects to come back with what their recommend on that is. I happen to like it. I think other people like it. It gives us some room inside for seating, but that's not that decision has not been quite made yet. We have agreed as a committee and with the architects on this basic kind of residential roof. Materials are to be determined. A smaller opening, a smaller area for solar panels or solar panels on the roof, the way a normal house would do. And we have discovered that the elevator shaft can be drilled deep enough to prepare it for a third story without putting anything on the top. So where we have shown you a chimney, that chimney is actually the third story housing for the elevator. That would not have to be there. So that chimney is plus or minus. And the same thing with the stairway extensions. They can be prepped without adding too significant an amount of cost. The floor loads for the ceiling of the second floor, so what the roof is on top of, will be built to hold books or to hold snow or to hold automobiles or whatever you'd like to store there. That's going to be done in the first place because if we ever decide to pop off the roof and go up either at the back part of it or the front part of it, that part will already be done. We think that the cost differential between the garden roof and the residential roof and the additional floor or no floor, those are all pretty much a wash. That it's not going to make a significant amount of difference. Bill had asked for what the cost of going to all brick was and got a number back of $122,000, so we are looking at that as our default on this. The cost of this has not changed since the last time I talked to you, but what has changed, so this is it, it's roughly $4 million, give or take. What has changed is I've gone in with Megan's help and with a magic calculator that turns numbers out the way I want them to turn out. And we've looked at what is the cost of a bond to a person who owns the average building, average home in Rockport, which is worth $360,000 and change. And so the taxes, if the taxes on an average home, let's see. So we're doing this for 4 different bonds amount for between $1 million and $2.5 million, all 20 years, all at the same current interest rate that we can get, which is, I think is 3.8%. Their annual payments are there, starting at $72,000 for a $1 million bond, going up to $180,000 for a $2.5 million bond. And then there are the changes in the mill rate, the increase in the mill amount to cover that bond. So a $1 million bond is 0.05 mil, up to a $2.5 million bond would be 0.17 mil increase. If we look at the current tax rate for an average house, which is $5,070.18, and add in the estimated tax, change it to the estimated mill rate with a bond, we can see, and then look at the tax rate, we can see that the average house, $360,000, with a $1 million bond, the increase in taxes annually would be $18.04. Going to, for a $2.5 million bond, $61.35. And you will notice that the estimated mill rate, third from the right column, does change with each of the bonds, because as the bonds goes up, the mill rate will have to go up in order to bring in more money to pay for it. So now here's the interesting part. I mean, that's interesting, but currently we are spending $34,800 on rental for a public library. If you figure out, with the current mill rate and the rental and the current tax rates, the average house, the $360,000 home, is paying $17.60 a year in rent for the new library, for the library that's out on Route 1. If you then go to the bottom table, what I've done is I've said, what happens if you pay the tax, you pay the bond for a new library, but you no longer have to pay rent? Well, in that case, on a $1 million bond, the average taxes will go up 44 cents on a $1 million bond, up to $43.75 on a $2.5 million bond. And this is what should actually be the case, because we're going to be giving up paying the rental, but we obviously have to pay the taxes on it. So if we were to look at, say, a $2 million bond over 20 years, and I'm seeing from here $29.31 net that it goes up. So that's 60 cents a week, 70 cents a week, something like that. It's not very much money considering what you get out of the value of a library. So part of what we need to think about in town is not only how much do we want to raise privately versus how much do we want to raise through taxes, but also how do people find out exactly what this really does mean for them? Because there's so much talk going around, or there has been over the last few years, about how much taxes will go up if if we float a large bond. And as it turns out, if the bond is kept reasonable and we choose to raise a great deal of the money, at least half of the money, I think that for most people, this is doable. And that's what I got. Any questions?
Do you have any immediate questions of Jan here? This is what I was thinking of doing, is following this on, asking for the capital campaign committee to give us their initial estimate and then open it up for floor questions. Is there
Sounds fine.
I have a
objection?
bunch of questions, but we can do it whenever.
Okay. Charlton, are you gonna be the spokesman for the capital campaign committee this evening?
Well, there are three of us here
Okay.
tonight.
Ah, okay.
So maybe we'll all three go up?
Why don't all three of you come on up?
Well, out of the conversation,
Yep.
we can go from there.
If you want slides, it's left and right.
Roughly over the last 2 months, I would say, we've been evaluating how much we can raise from the community to support the building of a contemporary library. And of course, that's not an exact science, and we can only evaluate based on the potential donors that we know in the community. But we think that we've identified several, and it leads us to believe that given an exciting library, which we feel we have with Dick Reed and what the ad hoc building committee has done, given the importance of a library, that we can raise roughly half of the amount, namely $2 million, from the citizens of Rockport in a timely manner. And that's a key aspect of all this, because if we're going to build a library as soon as possible, we're going to need to have a running start, which means that as soon as the bond is passed, we'll be taking commitments. Until the bond is passed, people will provide intent, simply intent. It's a lot of work. We've got one of those pyramids that tells us how many potential donors we're going to have to approach to be successful. We know we need to fill the top part of the pyramid with some really large donations. We feel we have 2 of those donations to date, but we're short quite a few, and it'll be a lot of work. So, Eliza, you want to
No, I
add to
don't have
that?
anything to add.
Joan.
You ready to jump in?
Yeah, I just say, we are eager to get going, but really can't do anything until the select board decides to move forward and to put the bond on the ballot. Hopefully in November. I think moving sooner rather than delaying this even more will benefit our effort. And also that there will be a need to do, for both the ad hoc committee, the select board, us, a lot of work to educate the community about how important this bond is and how, having the town pay half and the private citizens pay half is, we think, doable. And one thing that I said last time I was here is that we may not always get all of the cash in hand right at the beginning, but we would certainly have pledges that, and hopefully we can get a significant amount in hand in the beginning, but there may be 3 to 5 years of pledges spread out. Larger donations sometimes want to take some time, but that we could have a line of credit that would be based on that pledge amount, given also there's always some attrition that you plan for. But that's a common practice for a capital campaign like this.
So in other words, someone would, say, pledge $100,000 in 5 equal installments over
Right.
5 years.
Right.
Okay.
I still think that would allow us to begin the project.
Okay. Do we have any specific questions of the capital campaign committee before?
Yeah, I think a number of us have written down some questions. I'm willing to do it at your pacing, whether you want to query the audience first and have us tie things up, or whether you want to have a mishmash of back and forth.
Let's, I think maybe it'd be better to keep this orderly and now ask for the public comment. Is there an
They're pushing
objection?
it upstairs.
Is there any objection to hearing from the public now before we go into discussion?
No?
No? We open the floor, as you said at the beginning. Public comment will be welcome prior to each agenda item. This would be the appropriate time if people want to have their immediate reactions to what has been presented both by the Library Planning Committee and by the Capital Campaign Committee. Come right on up.
Noni Ames. I have a question for Jan, is that okay? Where are we vis-à-vis the DOT? Have they approved this intersection?
No, the DOT works on its own calendar. They have been approached.
Might go for a more.
Will Gartley runs this part of it. He has the best connections. Sorry, John.
There you go. There you go.
Sorry. We have approached the DOT. Will Gartley is doing it as our engineer, and we don't know yet when we will hear back, but we think we have an excellent chance of getting whatever money it is that they're going to give us.
Thank you.
Anyone else wish to ask a question, make comment? Oh,
John Titus, 29 Old Rockland Street. You talked about the possibility of a third floor in the future, and building the elevator shaft so it's ready to go. I don't know what the answer to this is, but I think it would be a good idea to consider that if there's a high likelihood that there will be a third floor on the building someday, to build it, and maybe not finish it, but build the structure, because that roof isn't cheap to build. And it seems like, I don't know at what point in the future, if there's a planned, future date for the third floor, but it just seems like it might make sense that if there's a high likelihood it's going to happen, build the shell of the building and you don't have to finish it. It might be cheaper than taking the roof off later and putting another story and then another roof back on. Thanks.
The current growth of the collections and programming, Ben, catch me if I go wrong, the floor plans that you've seen will let us go 20 years? Is that what it was, 15? Yeah. 15 years or so of increasing collections at the normal rate that we're going to be increasing them, and increasing services at the rate that we plan on increasing them without needing more building. So the reason for designing the building so that it could handle a third floor is that we don't ever want to go into the park. We don't ever want to have to go across Lime Rock, because going across Lime Rock means moving sewer and water, which is a very expensive proposition. So the building will be built to take it, but going to a third floor now would make a very tall building in a neighborhood, and there may never be a need for that, because we just don't know what libraries of the future are going to be like, and maybe we want to end up with a library branch in West Rockport. Who knows what happens 20 years from now? So at the moment, the architects are designing the building so that it can happen. The cost of taking down the roof is significant, and as time goes on, the labor on that gets higher. You're absolutely right. But we're not going to recommend at this point that a third floor be built and be there waiting.
By the way, I like it the way.
Thank you.
okay. Helen, you wanted to comment?
Helen Shaw, Rockport. When I first saw the plan for the roof garden and so on, it was sort of like, oh, yuck. But then I saw the drone pictures, and I heard Ben talk about what could go on up there. And I also heard the difference in the amount between the cost of the two different types of roof or third floor, and the cost of taking off the house roof, if you will, and the disruption to the services in the library when that's taken off. And I very, very much like the idea of the roof garden. There is so much can go. It's a unique opportunity for Rockport to bring people in for meetings, for events during the day. I believe Ben said something about having the kids make snowmen up there in the winter. I can see people up there in the evening doing their Wi-Fi and so on. The view that the drone showed was wonderful, and it did also show that there is no impingement on windows and so on, except possibly the lady who lives right across the street would have some issues, but I don't think most Mainers are very polite, shall we put it. And my gut reaction to the house building is that it's ugly. It looks like a squashed mushroom. So my personal vote is to put the garden up there. In the long run, it would cost less and be less disruptive to library services.
Is that a new one, squashed mushroom? Have you guys heard that one yet?
I've not heard that. I haven't gotten
Add
a
that
response
one.
from Cynthia and Dick yet, so we'll see.
I have a lot of fond memories of squashed mushrooms.
Moving on.
Moving right ahead here. And does anyone else wish to make any comment?
Let me just address a little.
Going to talk about the pink elephant after the squashed mushroom.
The, oops. The roof is not set. So the area over the children's area, which is the right-hand side in the back, above the compass rose, is currently being shown without a roof on it as flat space. That would be for solar panels and/or open space. And one of the things that Dick Reed and I talked about at lunch after the last meeting was, well, you put the solar panels on a panel 10 feet above, and you have a shelter for people underneath and solar panels above it. So that area, this discussion is not over. We were almost tied. If we even number of people, we were tied. So the roof is still under discussion. But what we don't think is that it's going to change the cost that significantly, although down the line, it will make things more disruptive if we have a full-size large roof on it. So it's still under discussion, so it's good to hear what people say.
Kathleen Meal. I want to start by saying thank you to everybody who has worked on this project for many years. I've said many times over those years that my hope was that we would come up with something that we could all be reasonably happy with, and I think that we're there. So thank you. You mentioned, Jan, the solar panels, and I know in the presentation that we had upstairs, there was a little bit of talk about green features. And if any of you have been to the Borsage Family Education Center at the Botanical Gardens, they've really incorporated how those green features impact the building as part of the building itself and the exhibit. You can actually see in real time how much energy the solar panels are generating. And
Is this Boothbay Harbor?
yeah, in Boothbay. So that makes me think, I'd like to do that, and I know we're not there yet, but there's also the potential for a lot of grant money around that and around all sorts of things. There's library grants, and I know that the Capital Campaign Committee is thinking about that. And so I'm wondering, is the half and half, which half would grant money be applied to? The private donations or the bond?
You mean who would have to?
I mean, do we think we can get $2 million from people and $2 million from a bond, and then whatever grant money we come up with, we pay down the bond faster? Or do we think that that $2 million from people includes grant money? Or that's my question. Okay.
I would just say, you know that between the town and us, we need to raise $4 million, and that we are going to be sharing. So I think anything we can do to bring, certainly a municipal type of grant would be maybe going towards the bond, but we haven't gotten that far. But it's a good question.
Does anyone else wish to make comment?
My name is Richard Anderson, Lime Rock Street resident. The comment is that, I mean, we really have come a long ways with getting a site that seems to be agreeable by everybody, a program that's agreeable to everybody, a cost that who knows whether it's reasonable or not, but it doesn't seem absurd, and so we really have come a long ways. And and I said the other day in the meeting with the ad hoc committee that, you know, it's critical that we really be sensitive to little things that could make or break this thing right now. And so the point I made the other day in the meeting was that you should avoid avoid those things that really are not that critical, that could kill this whole thing with objections. And so that's my comment. But my questions are, I don't understand the process. If we vote and we approve a bond, when is that bond taken out? And I mean, Joan and Charlton talked about the fact that you may end up with not cash, but pledges. So when is the decision made to break ground? Who's the guarantor of this pledged loan that we're going to get? So we get $1.5 million in cash, and we get $500,000 in pledges. Who guarantees that $500,000? Anyways, those are so it's just more of a process, some process questions. I would love to understand a little bit better about how this whole thing plays out with the plan that I think is very reasonable. I mean, I think all you're saying is very likely to happen, and so how does that work?
As pledges, that's why we can't get a pledge, people to sign a pledge until the bond is passed, because certainty is really important to a donor. Certainty is a key factor, but a pledge is a legal contract, so that when a donor signs a pledge, it obligates the donor to pay the donation. And it's actually binding on the donor's estate, so that an executor would pay that pledge in the event that the donor is deceased. So it's a binding document. And my experience is actually that you never want to get into a fight with a donor. We're trying to make friends with this campaign. So if somebody, for example, had a reversal of fortune and had made a very generous pledge and wanted to half their donation, I think we would go along with that. So it's common sense, really.
Yeah, but just to add to that too, I would say those pledges are counted as receivables on the books. I mean, they are, we can count on those. But also you usually build in your planning for some attrition, some that might not get paid in full. And it's a boilerplate kind of thing. All capital campaigns have a certain percentage based on the total. So that's all a part of the science of fundraising, basically.
Okay, you bet. maybe obviously I didn't make myself clear enough. But let's say, for example, day one, the bond passes. Day two, somebody signs a $2 million pledge. So now you have your $4 million. Where's the cash?
So,
I mean, who's going to pay the bills? The town now is going to hire a contractor, and so, okay, the bills start coming in. I only have $2 million in a bond that the town has gotten cash from. Somebody's given the town $2 million for their bond, but now I have $2 million from this one person.
So, it's a legal document, the
cash?
pledge is.
Where's the cash?
Right, and so you go to the bank
Okay.
and you get a line of credit
Okay.
for $2 million or whatever.
Right.
And that pledge counts as basically collateral.
So the bank will. So
Well-
I signed a $2 million pledge, and so the bank will loan on me. Is that who? Am I the
it's a
person now?
No, it's a pledge to the town.
So the town has to pay it, as the bills keep coming in. Then.
Well, you
So-
get a line of credit, then the bank is your partner with the town.
Right. So
which-
but the town is online for my $2 million pledge.
No,
Okay,
you're
that's-
online for it. You sign a legal
Pledged.
agreement.
Okay, that's what I'm saying. The bank is going to accept me
That's
as the
right.
creditor.
That's correct.
Okay, that's what I want to know.
Linda, did you get that he pledged the $2 million?
I did.
It's in the minutes.
Stop and see her on the way out and sign it.
I wanted to point to Noni and say she's going to sign the pledge.
Okay. Do we have any further comment? Okay. I know we have a number of questions, so I'm just gonna start down here with Jeff, who indicated earlier that he already had questions.
We can go back and
Please
forth.
be clear as to who you're directing the question
Yeah.
to, either.
I'm sure I'm going to take one of my last questions first, which would be to Joan, who is short of stature and has disappeared. There you go. Joan, your comment was, let's get the bond passed early. Let's do it now so that you guys can get on your way. I imagine that you're focusing on the hard work of cultivating donors, and I understand that, and that would certainly help your task. Has your committee talked about whether you think that the entire citizenry of the voting citizenry of Rockport is ready to give a reasonably healthy vote in favor of this project?
Oh, that's a big question.
It is.
And I don't think our committee is anyway prepared to answer that. I think we did talk, we had a meeting today, and we talked about, I think it's gonna take a lot of work from the ad hoc committee, from the select board, from our committee, to try and educate people and get some good materials together. I think that there needs to be a big education push about what this is about and why this is important.
So with your experience in raising lots of money for Hurricane Island and all the other places you've worked with, if we were to be so unfortunate to have a negative early vote, is that better or worse than having a single positive later vote, from your perspective of raising private money?
Just personally, and this is just, I've never raised money where it was dependent on a matching bond before. I've certainly raised money for matching gifts. But I think we have been talking about this for so long. And some people feel that they're very informed. Other people feel that they are not very well informed. But I think it's time to get moving on this. I think delaying it isn't going to help educate people more, I don't think. I think until the time is set, people know that they're going to be voting on something, that's when they start to pay attention. So I personally feel it's a benefit to get it on the ballot for November. There have been meetings around town. We probably need to do more meetings around town. We've talked about going door to door with some materials. I don't know. We should develop a whole plan on how to inform the public as best we can.
Can I
But
follow
that's my
on-
personal opinion.
While Joan is still there, I
And I
want to follow
think
up
the
on this.
committee feels
this
it's
line.
important to get. We can't really ask for money without knowing that the
I
town's
appreciate that,
gonna-
yeah, I think you're right.
I just wanted to ask, while you're still there, Jonah, and Charlton chime in too. I know you guys are very early in the process of trying to cultivate donors and going out and providing early information on the project, but what's the level of excitement that you're seeing among the people you've talked to so far? And I realize it's going to be an incomplete answer, and also what's the level of reticence that you're finding out there?
Well, Charlton may be able to answer this better than that, but I've not really talked with anyone yet. It's impossible to talk about something when we don't really know for sure what it's going to be.
We have a chicken and egg problem here,
Exactly.
and that's what I'm trying,
Yeah,
sort of
exactly.
digging
We
into
do.
that a little bit, just,
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, it's very preliminary. I have talked to potential donors, and it's certainly not a sample that's big enough to draw exact conclusions from.
Understand.
But I do think, and I agree with Joan, that people want to see something happen. The people who know about the situation are tired of waiting. They really are looking forward to completing the project. So that's the sense that I'm getting. The importance of the library isn't lost on those people who've been following it. And the passion we've had back and forth, people who wanted the library in town, they want to see Rockport successful. And that's an exciting situation, really.
Thank you.
Do either of you have a question of?
I've got a
campaign?
ton, I was just waiting for my turn.
Okay. For these?
Sure.
Okay.
Charlton, you had said at one point that you were going to be doing fundraising, and it sounded like you said Rockport citizens only. Is that how, I just wouldn't imagine that you would consolidate it only to the citizens of Rockport. That's a great place to start, but are we looking for donors outside of our actual town base?
Well, I think you need to be opportunistic, and what happens in a situation like that, you go to your most likely donors first. And then when donors come forward and they're generous, they typically have all sorts of information for you. And they might say, well, my cousin in Tennessee loves libraries, and what you're doing in Rockport is so attractive that my cousin in Tennessee might be interested. So
No, I just wanted to make
you
sure
just
it wasn't.
never
Yeah.
know. You never know. There are so many surprises that happen with a capital campaign that I'm sure Joan's aware. And they can be absolutely wonderful. And you have disappointments, but we want to thank everybody. And the one thing I've learned is that the last thing you want to do is think that you're going to get a campaign accomplished with half a dozen people. And so that one donor of $2 million, that is so unlikely.
Oh, we already got it stamped.
That is so unlikely.
Another question, if I may. Not that this is anything that anyone would ever want, but the legalities of a commitment of Mr. Anderson's $2 million, and then all of a sudden he says, you know what, I made a mistake, and I don't want to do that anymore. But it was a commitment. It was some legal document. So the question is, if there was legal recourse on Mr. Anderson for backing out for his $2 million, does that go through the town's
We are not going to do that.
legal people? How does that work, or do we just wipe our hands of the fact that it was a binding document?
Well, you have to look at the reality of these situations. Yes, a pledge is a legal commitment, but these are sophisticated donors who sign these pledges, and you don't have people signing a pledge unless they really mean to follow through. My experience has been nobody signs a pledge with the idea that they may or may not make the donation, and they have the wherewithal to do it.
But if they did, we're in an alternate universe. Does it fall on the town's legal people, our town attorneys?
We're going to look to backfill.
I'm not a lawyer.
If it was a $100,000 commitment and then the person said, you know what, I changed my mind, I was drunk when I talked to you all, but they signed the thing, is this not a legitimate question?
Well, if I could chime in, I've been involved with capital campaigns before, and as Charlton says, it's a little bit of a cliche, but literally you can take the pledges to the bank. the history of it is that pledges are almost always honored. That situation that you're describing just doesn't happen very often. I mean, yes, the person who pledges says, I'm gonna give $200 a year for 5 years, I'm gonna pledge $1,000, and perhaps they can't do it, they can't finish it up at the end. That'll happen, but usually the major donors aren't gonna happen. And the banks are smart. They won't loan money on a capital campaign with pledges. They don't think they're gonna get paid back. And so they typically, in my experience, and you guys have way more experience than I do with this, but they typically will honor those pledges as valid collateral.
Plus, let me jump in here also, we don't need $4 million the day of groundbreaking. That's a portion throughout the thing, so the bond money could certainly be used first, and then the pledges could fill in the backside of it. There's
I totally get all this. My question is only whose legality
let
backs up
me
your all's
answer
capital
your
campaign?
question. The town will control the bond money. A legal entity building committee needs to be set up so that donations can be held in escrow. Because if we fail to raise the money, donors may wish to have it back. So it can't simply be floating around in a town bank account or in my bank account. So there would be a building committee, a 501c3 kind of building committee that would have escrow accounts, and they would be the ones who would have to deal with donors if they were going to do with it. I don't think it would be up to the town or town attorney.
And not that I don't trust you at all. Does that make sense to everyone else in this
We're all a
room?
bunch of lawyers.
I think the mechanism by which the money will be, we talked about this a bit today, is yet to be decided once we know we're gonna be doing this.
Okay.
Yeah, but it will need to be legal and be vetted with lawyers, and I think, you know, everything will be done so that the town is held harmless to the best extent possible.
Rick, you?
We had a long conversation with the lawyers today, and we'll be working through this problem for a bit of time. But, you know, to go to Owen's concern, which is a real concern, I don't know if it's getting expressed exactly right, but the more likely scenario that is a little scary is that the town would pull the trigger on executing the bond before it really had gotten enough pledges, which, you know, so you need to make sure that the language of the bond language is clear enough that we don't go ahead and say, yeah, we're close enough, let's start construction, before we have all of the legs we need to get the job done. And the fear is, and it's a fear that the taxpayers are gonna have, is, am I gonna be stuck paying more than I voted for? If I voted for 2 million and all of a sudden now they need 2.5 million, we don't wanna be in that position. And the bond document will be written, and the warrant article will be written with that in mind, that everything has to be put in place legally before we can go ahead and sign that bond document and start construction. You know, because the taxpayers are the ones that are, you know, we have an obligation to make sure that we're spending the taxpayers' money the way they gave us the authority to do so. And it's that in-between zone that I think is the scarier part, but that is in the language of the bond document.
So I think what you're implying too is that the bond, if the bond passes, and we are still, in which, you know, if it passes in November, we will have a long ways to go to
yeah.
raise our 2 million.
Right.
So that bond won't be executed until we have the right assurances that we have raised the
Right.
match
Until
for
it-
that bond, basically.
until
The
the lawyers
voters
are comfortable.
will approve the authority to borrow the money. That's what the bond question will be, the authority to, and then it will be up to the manager and the board to decide when that.
And where the
loan is
money actually
executed.
sits
And the
hasn't
lawyer.
been decided yet.
Right.
And the lawyers to make sure that we've completed the authority, and, you know, we have the legal standing to say, okay, now we can execute the bond. And
I mean, as an example, the infrastructure bond, that was approved a year
Oh,
and a
yeah.
half ago now, and we didn't borrow any of that money until we had everything all
Yeah.
set
I
and
mean,
ready to
it may
go.
be some years.
yeah, it will.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In generality, how many years do you think that might be?
Not to put you on the spot.
Yeah.
I've had, large $50 million capital campaigns go on for 5 years, Generally, you get the biggest amount in the beginning, and then it's that last quarter that is sometimes the hardest to bring in. But I would say, I don't know, a year or two, I don't know.
Well,
It's hard.
in this case, I think the need is so clear.
Yeah.
And donors have said to us, what's really good about this project is that it's a one-time ask. You're not gonna be coming back to me year in and year out, and there'll be an outcome. And the outcome is the building, and the donor's gonna wanna see the outcome. So the tendency, I think, for most donors will be to be as close to cash on day one as possible. And of course, if a pledge is required because somebody's gonna be more generous, then obviously we should go that route. But the intent will be to get as much money as soon as possible, so we can all see the building and have the experience of success.
So in other words, in general terms, we might see the pledges fulfill that amount within a couple of years, but it could still be
Oh, yeah,
3 or 4 more
they all
beyond that
come in.
before we actually receive the money because of the type of pledge that's made. I'll give you X amount every year for 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, generally, it's, 5 years is
That's a
pretty
lot.
Well, I don't know. It
Well,
depends
for-
on the
for-
size of the.
campaign of this
yeah,
size,
But
that would
I
be
wouldn't
a
say it'd
no.
be more than that.
Right.
No,
Yeah.
no, it wouldn't be more.
Yeah, hopefully, much less.
Yeah, go right ahead.
I'm curious of my fellow members of the board. Does the answer to that question change what you would do in terms of putting this forward to the people? If it was 3 years or 4 years or 5 years, why is that significant?
Good point. But
But remember,
first of all, I
that
think-
doesn't mean you can't use money from the bank to be building.
Right,
That's
right.
not what,
Yeah.
what I'm asking is, what answer could you have given that would have changed whether or not we wanted to put this forward to the voters?
Right. I think we're asking the wrong questions right now, and I think we're focusing on the wrong things. I mean, having been involved in Yale's $4.5 billion capital campaign, and I was creating a video to say thank you to the people that gave 10 million. People give money, they'll give it in such a way that it's useful. So we're really we spent the last 15 minutes on the wrong questions. And so much of this whole process, with some stellar omissions, contradictions to this, but so much of what we're doing, I'm afraid, is sometimes the blind leading the blind. And we need to feel a little bit better about listening to those people who have been through this process before. We need to be better at having those people guide us. And we need to present to the citizens. My concern, and I'll go back to one of my questions, if I may hijack it for just a second. I know you got a bunch more, Owen. But I want to go into the vote, wherever it is, with most everybody in Rockport feeling as though they have had a good two-way conversation with people that know what they're talking about the library. And I'm not sure, and that they feel satisfied with the decisions that have been made. Whether or not they feel ownership of it, I'd like them to feel ownership about it, but some of the things have sort of gone beyond that. We've had focus groups, but they were of limited, not attendance. There were people that wanted to come that weren't able to, things like that. So I'm a little bit afraid about disenfranchisement with the people, because we have very recently found that we are not, we can't predict the future all that well sometimes.
Can I follow up on that?
Yeah.
My concern about that is because I agree with you that I think we have not yet found the right way to engage people and keep them informed. But my perception is that this group, it looks as though we are trying to find out what the people are going to do.
As opposed
I
to.
want to know whether this room will go to bat for that building. All of us and all of these people.
Well,
I
sort of,
watched
yeah.
a process that I was very impressed with about as the liaison. I watched these people really try and incorporate the feedback that they received. And the process was flawed, and we didn't get enough people's feedback and all the rest of it, but the effort is there. Are we each going to invite people into our homes and explain to them how it happened, and, you know, this part's great, and maybe there are parts of it you don't love, but, like, let's go get this done?
That's, I mean, I'll raise my hand, yes. I'll, you know, as part of this board, I'll back it up, yeah.
I was asking these questions because I suspect that people will come and ask me these kind of questions, and I'm looking to make sure I have the right answers to give. That's sort of why I'm dealing on this aspect. You know, we do need to get down to talking about the physical presentation, the physical structure, and how much we want to ask the voters for. You know, but we need to understand that process as well, from my point. That's my perspective. Owen?
Yeah, and I just wanted to follow up on that. It's, you know, I go out and I talk to a lot of different people, and so for me to go to the Dodge Boys and explain to them what a capital campaign is, first off, and then when they say, so when are you going to get the stinking money? And I say, well, I'm not sure. It could be a year and a half from now, or it could be 5 years from now. That shows a lot of, not misunderstanding, but there's not a good answer for that. And so the leading questions is just to gather as much good information as we can. So to me, it would make a difference. If Joan was to say resoundingly, you're looking at about 5 years, that alters our timeline a little bit. We have to talk more about the line of credit. When do we actually break ground? If she says not a problem, a year and a half from now. So when I talk to people that aren't overly familiar with these processes, I don't leave them with this ambiguous answer about how their tax dollars, or when I'm going to get their tax dollars, or what this whole thing is going to look like. So it does, to me anyway, make a bit of a difference.
I'm wondering if that's, you know, the first question they ask, or if it's the 23rd, in terms of, the first thing I would think for citizens all across the board, whether they might be giving to a capital campaign or not, the first question is, my tax dollars. Is it worth my tax dollars? Do I support it from that perspective? Because everybody's going to be doing that. And everybody's going to be doing that, assuming a positive vote, whether they voted, yes, I will voluntarily take on that load, or no, you know what, this whole library thing, pshaw, for whatever reason. And so anyway.
Just so you know, my sister-in-law is a push-off, so.
Just one comment about the capital campaign. It is important for this board, I believe, to understand what a capital campaign is and how it works. And so to that end, Owen's questions, I think, are entirely appropriate, and we need to understand it, because you're right. We need to be able to explain it to our citizens what it is, because the question will come up. And for me, what we're doing with a capital campaign, we're creating an asset. And that's what the pledges are. The pledges are an asset. Whether the pledge comes in with a check right away or a promise to pay in a couple of years, we're creating an asset that then we are going to draw on to help build our library. And it's really that simple. And I think we create the asset in a somewhat short period of time, a year or two maybe, to gather the pledges, and then the asset is going to mature over 3 to 5 years, let's say, something like that. So it is, I think the questions are, we don't need to get down into the nitty gritty of is it going to be 4 years or 5 years or 6 years or whatever. We need to understand the process of a capital campaign.
So I now would like to move back to discussing the physical plan and what Jan has presented to us, and go through that area without dealing again until we get to the end of this, the actual money aspect. Do we have questions about the design and the structure that has been presented to us? Well, I have a couple questions.
please,
I'm going to
please
start
do.
with that. First of all, the intersection, Jan, if you would.
Yes.
The intersection itself, that hasn't been approved by MDOT,
Correct.
but we know there's going to be a cost associated to it.
Yes.
Has that been included in your estimate?
Yes.
It used to be.
One more, there you go.
Okay. So
Not included.
I believe somewhere in there is the road planning
Oh, down at the bottom, not
Down the
including
bottom.
Lime Rock Road
Right.
relocation. of-
Now, we need to understand that constructing the building does not require constructing the road and vice versa. When I talked to the architects about what would be the most efficient way to do this, it would be to do it all at once. Because then you would have all the contractors there, only one construction manager, things would be worked on in parallel. But you could put up the building without changing the road, you can change the road without putting up the building.
And just to jump on that, has Mr. Gartley told you whether, there's two things I see with MDOT. There's permission, and there's who's going to pay for it. And I'm gathering that nothing definitive either way has come from MDOT.
I don't think there's anything in writing,
Right.
but I think that permission is
Proclivity to give.
a fait accompli.
Okay.
They are happy to have us change this intersection. They know this is a bad intersection.
So bump outs, all that sort of thing, nothing a part of
That's
that
not,
is
none of that's
jeopardized.
gonna, no, because the bump outs, no, that's not gonna bother them at all. They're
Okay.
happy with all of that stuff.
Thank you.
far
Have
as I
they
know.
looked at the road alignment of, if you're coming down Union Street and you want to turn left and go up Lime Rock, have they looked at the sight line on that
I
yet?
can't, that I can't tell you.
Okay.
I know that I did speak with Will Gartley, and he did have a concern about that, because moving the intersection, and we don't need to get into the weeds of this, I guess, but moving the intersection a little bit north on Union Street does lead to that left-hand turn being almost a blind turn for cars coming up.
Yes, I think the measurement is good, that but I don't, I am not a traffic guy.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we don't need to get into that, but there's probably some wiggle room there, I would imagine.
One, Mr. Chairman, one thing that would mess up the whole idea would be, DOT is not gonna likely approve this if Lime Rock Street's a two-way street. They're only gonna approve it if it's only if it's an enter only, if it means traffic is coming out onto Central and Union, they're likely not gonna approve that, because it would mean too much going on in that intersection, the way it is. So their interest is really in making that, it only improves the intersection if it's one way.
Okay.
The other thing is the reason for pulling it out of the total project cost is it's easier for DOT to wrap their arms around it. Is if it's buried in the total package, they're gonna have a tough time pulling it out and making sure that they're not paying for something that's library related. So
Okay.
pulling it all out makes sense to DOT and makes the whole granting process easier.
So where does that information come from, that they're unlikely to approve it? It
From
sounds
Will.
like from Will?
Yep.
Okay.
Owen, you said you had some questions.
While this slides up, I got a quick question. It's just easier if I come.
Yep, knock everything over.
So, say it's February, and I'm red car, for you all, red car, and I'm going to leave, and I back up here, and I didn't put my studded snows on. Do you envision an issue with people being, there's a decent grade change in and through here, and so you're starting already at an incline. Has there been any discussion about how this may be evened out, or is that a concern for anyone else?
That has not been discussed at my house. I don't know. I'm not a traffic guy. I leave that to Will and MDOT to do
I
that.
happened to be out there, and I was looking at it, and I was trying to figure out the whole orientation, and if you do go and back out and then attempt to
Well,
pull
but don't
forward-
forget that parking is into the park a ways.
Right, but the road that I would be driving on is the existing line of, I haven't seen anything that would lead me to believe that there would be a grade change in and around there.
Grade change, no.
Okay.
No.
Is that a concern for?
Jan lives on a real hill.
We're really good at plowing.
I haven't seen anybody have a problem on that hill ever.
Where you currently,
Where we were going up that, and people would park and go up that, just the same.
Going down it is usually the problem.
Just, sorry.
Yeah, you get going and you slam on those brakes and that really does skid.
Jan, can you describe the process? Is it going to be the Ad hoc Library Planning Committee's responsibility to engage the neighbors about this one-way road? issue?
Don't know. This is, we now have to figure out what our role is from here on in, because the architects are basically done. They won't do any more work until it's the nitty-gritty, minute kind of stuff. So the ad hoc, we need to talk about it at our next meeting. The role that I see is publicity, working with the library committee and the fundraising committee to try to educate. But we also do need to, yes, address the neighbors in terms of the one-way streets. That is something that I'm going to have the committee do in the next week or two. Yeah.
We have a resident of Lime Rock Street right here, and we can, you have a general sense of what the reaction, this information has sort of trickled out over the last month or so, and has there been a general reaction up there?
We've not, all of us talked, incidentally, I think one way all the way makes more sense than one way, the way it's currently configured. Me personally, they're
all going to turn around in your driveway.
I already have people turning around in our driveway, and Don Flock has people using our driveway to turn around, even though it's two-way, okay? It's just going to increase. Our driveways are going to become turnarounds. And I know Will's talked about, there is a turnaround down there, below there, but believe me, ours are much bigger. It's going to be much easier to turn around in our driveways than it is for the little spot you're allowing for turnarounds. So I think a one-way all the way maybe makes more sense than the way it's currently configured. And then, and Owen, I'm with Jan. I have no idea what the engineers say about that grade and how easy. I stop and I have to pick up a mail down there in front of Jones' house, and in the middle of winter, I stop and I get my mail and I start up again. So I don't think the grade is an issue there for what you're talking about.
Good. We've got a request to speak from the audience, is that?
She who must be listened to.
I just wanted to
Left side.
answer Owen's question. In looking at the form, you were worried about people coming down and making that left turn. I think if you take the island out, that's going to move the traffic more to the right, so they're going to have a wider view. They're going to not. Right now, it's a fairly sharp curve, but if you remove the island and move the lane over a little bit more to the right, then they're not turning quite as quickly, so they'll be able to see the downhill people more.
I'm sorry, this is coming up Central Street? Is
Yeah,
that
if you
what
come
you're
up
speaking
Central Street, where that little blue car is, that's pretty much he's going to go right through where the island is now. We're just going to put him further to the right, which will give him a larger view of what's coming down the hill.
I think the bigger concern is actually somebody coming the other way on Central Street from Camden and turning left into Lime Rock, not being able to see the traffic that comes up Central Street.
But they will be, because they'll be further over to the right. Right now, they're very close to that. It's a very tight curve, whereas now it's going to be wider out, so your view in both directions is going to be better.
We have
At
to have
least.
the
That's what makes
traffic
it
Signage and road markers.
Traffic engineer.
Lane markers are going to be an issue.
These are questions that can be dealt
ask the
with
questions of the experts.
over the next couple of years. Do we have other questions about the structure, siting of it?
I do.
Okay, Owen?
The preparations for the third floor, the shoring up for the potential third floor at some point in the future.
Yes.
Is there any chance that building, and you may not be able to answer this, that building standards would change in the 20-year lifespan to make what we made today not viable? It's just a random thought that I had. Is there any chance that something may change? Obviously, something may change.
I cannot predict 20 years worth of building things, but what I can predict is buildings get grandfathered all the time. If it's not dangerous, it won't be a problem. The building would be specified to the weight of books. And it would never be anything other than a third library floor. It's not going to be living space or anything like that. So I don't think.
Because I'm all about it. Prep it for it, spend the money now so we can just remove the roof.
Absolutely.
Try not to interrupt services. And we're relatively sure that the way that we would do this ceiling for the second floor of the third floor, if and when, it'd be a minimal disruption, if zero disruption to your services, because we've made that platform so sturdy that you don't have
I
to do it.
can't say that, because if you have the slanted roof that has to be taken off, there's going to be some disruption, because that material has to be dropped over the side.
Right,
or something
right.
like that. I cannot tell you that this is a no disruption deal. What I can tell you is, if you look at this plan, the part that hangs out to the right, if that remains flat for solar or for other use, that would be, if that goes to a third story, that's a 2,000 square foot addition, which is 25%. That would be a nice size addition, and that might be all that needs to be done. Let's say that we don't need collection
I see
space,
what
we
you're
want a
saying.
maker space.
Yeah.
Or the director needs an apartment, or something like that. Then you could just raise it there and not have to worry about
the voice of the
disrupting roof.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Ken?
I'm just going to make some comments. I like the way this looks.
Thank you.
In
Well, I
contrast
don't
to
know why
the
I'm
squash
thinking this,
mushroom
but
comment, I must
I didn't do it.
respectfully disagree with that. I think that the exterior presentation, what we see before us tonight, is the most pleasing that I've seen to date.
He is, by the way, looking at all brick with the.
Yeah, I'm looking at the
Just so
one
you
that
know
you
which
had
one.
up on the screen earlier. To me, it's the most pleasing one that we've seen to date. As far as the roof possibly coming off, we've heard from Ben that we're looking at a minimum, I think, of 20 years before we would have to do that. And
Yeah.
given the fact that we have a 20-year bond to pay off, I don't think we're going to be looking at before that. And then, I'm not going to tell tales out of school too much, but in my private conversations with Ben, he's indicated to me that he thinks 20 is a minimum, and more likely it would be 30 years.
I
that we'd
I
look for an
agree with that.
expansion. At that time frame, how long does the roof last? I mean, you may be looking at needing to replace at least the exterior sheathing of the roof at that point anyway.
We don't know the exact materials, but the materials that we're looking at are more like 30 to 50-year lifetimes.
Yeah.
But,
But at any rate,
I say,
you know,
Don't know.
I like the look of the facility the way it is now. I think it fits in with the neighborhood reasonably well. The roof lines are more interesting than the hip roof was on the old one. And if I'm not mistaken, the hip roof on the original design that you had before, I remember you talking about a disruption if you had to take that off, but I thought at that point the plan was not to build the structural third floor with that particular
no,
roof design.
the flooring would be enough to handle the snow load and therefore the book load.
Okay.
But the piece that would be above it would be flimsier and easier to take off and simply go straight up. This is a more substantial roof.
Right, yeah.
This is a truss system.
This is truss. This is either slate or metal or something like that.
But the interior is all interwoven.
Interior is all going to be trusses,
Not usable space.
but you can look at that interior of the roof above the ceiling as storage space.
Now, you mentioned, Jan, I think that the chimney, for lack of a better term, which
Yes.
is the top of the elevator shaft, you've now determined that doesn't necessarily need.
It does not need to be there.
I don't think it looks bad, quite honestly. I
No,
think
it doesn't
looks
look
okay.
bad. It looks more home-like,
Would
but
there be a requirement for any other roof access, plumbing, vent pipes, chimneys, other things?
those would all be set in the ceiling, second floor ceiling, third floor. Everything would be brought up to where it needs to be, would be my guess.
Okay.
That the building will be designed to be enlarged.
But
And
I'm
the-
talking about in terms of just functional use. Are there other chimneys and other egress to the roof, like vent pipes?
I don't know
are
where
they
the
gonna
I
be?
don't know where the mechanicals are going, but certainly there needs to be venting
Right.
in various
So I'm
places.
just wondering, is there another chimney that's going to be stuck on someplace else, or can we use that one or something like that? It's
Don't
just a-
know.
Just a simple
Don't
Oh,
question.
that's a good idea. The stink pipe comes out of the chimney,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Jeff, you had a question?
Well, you as chair want to, no, it's a question. You as chair want to sort of work on design stuff for a little while. But I've heard several times that this is the design that the ad hoc committee is putting forward. So my question is process to get it from here to a good result in voting. That's really what I want. And so the question is, what is the committee willing to do? What tasks do they want to share? And to educate, to have one-on-ones, 20-on-1, whatever it's going to take, to bring everybody up to speed and to.
This is the next go-round. I'm looking at a trifold mailer to go to every residence, and what does that cost? If we if we keep having things upstairs, the same people keep coming. So we do want to make sure that we touch as many people as we possibly can. So mailers to every residence, newspaper articles, ads, poster boards, overhead airplanes, whatever it is, drones, whatever it is that we can do, that will be our job to help get the bond passed by showing people this is what it's for.
So a couple of specific questions / planting seeds in the back of your head, because it's fertile. Does a model make sense?
No.
A lot of people can't read blues. They can't read.
Yeah.
Look at that.
I brought this up to the architects. They said they have not built a model in at least 10 years,
Okay.
that nobody needs them and nobody really wants them. So
Also for 3D rendering?
because you can do such good renderings now on a computer in terms of 3D renderings, that a physical model is no longer,
Okay.
does not seem to be.
For instance, I have never seen the angle if I were to walk 30 feet on the grass that
There
way.
was one that they haven't done it.
There are several shots that you're not seeing here, like you don't see around from Russell Street straight on.
Right.
They exist.
All right. That's good. That's what I
Not
want
with
to
the
hear.
new
exist.
roof design, and not with the all brick and new roof design. In the original plan, the original schematic, it was there, and it is very informative to see it from further up Russell. It's a very nice view from that. It's a matter of how much work they can do and get it prepared
But
for
with
us.
the software that's available today, it is.
This is very
not
doable. This is
a
very
hard
doable.
process to do.
What I want to do is make a laundry list of things and get that out in conversation so this board can support you in what you're doing and support us if we take over some of the tasks.
Put me on the list. Yes, I'll get whatever you need.
So the other models, no, and this, let me look at my notes for a moment.
Can I follow up on the models thing for a
Would you
minute, and then
please?
I'll let you go back? The 3D renderings online, I mean, to me, that'd be kind of cool if we said to people, hey, come on in and put it on the 3D glasses and look at this and see what it looks like.
Excuse me, did you say you had the budget for that?
That's what I'm wondering, is what that would cost.
That's why you're talking to us. I mean, I'm serious.
Let me pose a quick answer, a quick and dirty answer, and that is, a VR rendering is going to show the furniture, the wall materials, the floor materials, the ceiling materials, the shelving materials. It's going to show everything, or it wouldn't be a good VR. That
VR
gives
being
people
virtual
things to hold
reality.
on to, where they will now come back and say, I hate that furniture. This is not about the furniture. It's not about that kind of stuff.
But an exterior only. That's what I'm thinking about, because that's where a lot of the conversation has been.
I will certainly run this by people. I don't know, Ken, quite frankly. I don't know what's involved in making something like that.
I don't either, that's why I asked.
3D renderings of all 6 sides, that's doable, that's Photoshop,
Yeah,
that's easy.
I've used some software called SketchUp.
Yes.
Where you can just walk around, once you put the walls there, and you put the windows there, and you put the surface, you can just rotate it around it. It's really sort of a 3D, but without the fancy glass.
Again, utilizing the experts, they have that firepower
Yeah.
in spades. What I want to do is, I really don't want to hear anybody, the chair of the ad hoc committee or anybody else say, do we have the money to send out a 3-fold flyer? That's ridiculous. So I want to make sure that this board, the town manager, you guys are asking for what you need, so it's a success.
We will, and I have prices for threefold mailers, and it's nowhere near the cost of a 3-dimensional model, which then you have to get people to come into town office and see it. So,
Which reminds me of my last question for you. Your committee mimicking what this board has done about every 6 years, which is to say, go out to West Rockport, go out to Glen Cove, go out to those places, and even if you only get 6 people, those 6 people talk to other people. Is that something on your radar?
you mean like the listening tour, only this time a showing tour? Absolutely, of course. I'm thinking about in people's living rooms about in church basements, wherever we can find people to meet to talk to them. It's like, it's a political campaign.
I'm now duct taping my face.
Brendan?
I
And
just-
then on to Owen.
I don't know whether this is going to be helpful, but I just want to go back to one specific element that I thought I heard the architects describe differently in our meeting
Please.
the other day. A moment ago, you described that roof as a truss roof.
No, you can't hold me on that because I have no idea what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I texted the architects and I haven't heard back from them.
What I heard in the meeting
oh.
was that there was an opportunity to frame that roof in a traditional way and retain quite a lot of usable storage space.
Yes, that's true, yes. Yes.
And with or without that element up there that looks like a chimney,
Yes.
it would give the library staff the opportunity to go up there safely, and operate in,
You can explain to me sometime what a truss roof is then, all right?
That's when things are in your way.
It's highly space consumptive.
It's the lightweight, low-cost version of getting strength.
And this is not what I want to know.
Okay.
Okay. Owen?
So, kind of building on what Jeff was saying, so I apologize for not attending all of the focus group meetings. I wish
Apology
that I
accepted.
had. Thank you. So, how were they? Were they well attended, and what did you
Yes.
learn from them that will make moving forward that much easier?
I learned that in concentric circles, the closer you are to the library, the more you don't want any change whatsoever. The further away you are, the more open you are to different possibilities. I learned that, and I've known this now for the 4 years that I've been working on this, that nothing strikes the public heart quite as deeply as a library. Who knew? That change is always difficult, and that preservation of what we think the town looks like is an exercise in Disney, and that we may not be able to do that, and that the best library is not look like a small house on a corner. Best library now looks like a library. I've also learned, and I'm juggling this, the responsibility that the committee has to follow and the responsibility that it has to lead. What's the balance? How much what does a representative committee want to do? How much are we simply representing what people already know they like? How much is it our responsibility to try to guide them towards what we have decided, and it's only us, have decided is a good future for the town? It's very tough for me to figure out where on that line I belong, as it is for you guys when you're trying to vote on something. You need to represent the people who live here. And yet at the same time, you're chosen, and we were chosen to lead the community in the development of a new library. And so what I've learned is ain't so easy.
So going into this next stage,
This is all about talking. This is all about communication. This is all about showing people what we think is a good idea and then actually finding out if they think it's a good idea. Part of it is truthfulness of cost, because until there are charts, people have great fear about it. And it's all about finding out what people mean when the word library comes into their head. Other than that, I haven't learned much of anything.
don't admit to it though.
I'd like to start us moving forward here.
Could I ask Jan one question?
Sure.
And maybe to the rest of the board too, and I think Jeff alluded to this a little bit. Do we have enough time to have the conversations we need to have with our fellow citizens and all the people who are interested in the Rockport Public Library to have a well-informed vote and hopefully a positive vote in November.
We have 97 or 98 days. Every day I hear somebody telling me how many more days there are before the presidential election, so it's the same number of days. It's tight. There's no time to go on vacation. We need to start, my committee and the fundraising committee and the select board need to kind of change gears from developing a building to saying, here's what we've come up with. How do we talk about it? How do we show people this is a good idea? There are still possibilities for changing this building. That's why I've said, the architects are done now until the final moments when they have to come back in on this. This is we're all going off into the educational business now. And we will have a good turnout. We will have a great turnout in November. Going to compare to 2008 in terms of voter turnout. So the more voters that turn out, the happier I am that we'll get an honest opinion.
I agree with that.
The schedule that has been put together, moving from here to November 8, includes a number of education sessions. That doesn't replace personal contact.
Right.
And if we decide that we want to move forward and take the vote in November, we need to do a lot of work between now and then. My fear is if we put it off to next June,
No.
the number of people that are going to be voting is drastically
Yes.
smaller. There's also the momentum that has been developed that is in a lot of people's minds right now because there has been notice of it out there. There have been attempts to bring people in. There have been people watching it on the TV. If we wait another 6 months, all of a sudden any momentum that has been developed is dissipates.
Jeff, I didn't think we were ready. The steering committee didn't think it was ready for last November's, or the November before, whenever it was, that we voted on the RES site versus library and so forth. I didn't think we were ready for that. We have time now to be ready, but this is the time that we have to do it. That's all there is to it.
That's great.
The way I describe it
ahead.
is, it's a short time frame, but I think if we have a longer time frame, we'll just drag it out longer time. We have to get this done.
And I know,
kinda
by
puts
asking the
pressure,
question, I
yeah.
wasn't necessarily
Yeah.
advocating, but I wanted to ask the question so we could have the discussion about
Okay.
it.
But one of the questions the architects need and the committee needs is this schematic, are they going in the right direction, or are they going in the wrong direction? And I think they're looking for the board to give some sort of
Well, we charged the library planning committee, the ad hoc committee, with developing something and bringing it to us. We entrusted in them the idea that they would do their best to bring something that could be done. Not something that is off in the world,
But now they've done that, and
16-story
now
glass
we have
structure.
to-
yeah.
we have to weigh in.
We have to weigh in.
We have to weigh in on
And at this point, I'd sort of like to move forward to, our discussion on the size and moving to the vote. But,
Size?
I'm sorry, the size of the bond.
I thought we'd done that already.
Okay, but with moving that on, I'd like to entertain comment again from the public, as we've said before, and I see Mr. Anderson.
Yeah, I concur that the plan, it's as good as it's gonna get now, and without a whole change of committees and a whole nother process, that's what we've got, and that's our best we got. I think it's good. I think it's, I think you're not gonna get a huge organized objection to what you've got there, and that's important, And so now can you generate excitement is really the issue. But the question, I wanted to come back to the earlier, and I wish Charlton and Noni were still here, or Charlton and Betsy and Joan were still here, because
Joan's still here.
Oh, Joan. Okay. So Brendan raised the question, how would the answers that they were asking Joan and Charlton change your decision tonight? And Rick
timetable question.
said, then a little bit later, the taxpayers are concerned about, am I going to get stuck with an unpaid bill? And that's what I was probing on. Where's the unpaid bill? You know, where's, and when are you going to decide to break ground? When are you going to decide to abandon renting? Okay? 3 years from now, 5 years from now, Charlton and Joan haven't raised the 5 million, or the 2 million, or 2.5 million, whatever it is that we're going to raise. So taxpayers are going to want to know that answers to those questions, and I think that Joan, all deference to you, no lawyer would ever allow any client to say, well, that seldom happens.
I didn't say.
Okay, well, it doesn't happen very often.
Okay,
It doesn't happen very often. And you don't go into agreements. You don't go into borrowing $2 million or $500,000 or whatever well, it doesn't happen very often, so we don't need to worry about that. So I think I challenge, and Brendan sort of implied that you don't need to worry about all these answers to these questions. I say you do need to worry about the answers to these questions. That what's going to happen? When are we going to break ground? When are we going to abandon renting and say we're not going to raise the money, we're not going to get the 2 million or 2.5 million? When does that happen? And when am I going to be left with an extra tax bill like Snowball? Okay. So I'm just saying that I think as you think about deliberate this question, not that you have to have answers tonight, but that that if you decide to vote for this bond and push this on the which I agree you should, I think you should, but you're going to need answers to those questions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Joan?
Yeah, I mean, I agree, we do need some answers, but this is not rocket science. We're not the first library to do a bond match with a public campaign kind of match. And so I don't know where to go, but I bet Reed and Company knows. There are other towns in Maine who have had a bond and then have done private fundraising to match. And so I think there's some places we could go to get perhaps some good models that, but I think it's true that we want to have the most concrete answers possible for the electorate.
Valid question. Ken?
I'm just going to answer Richard's question for now, and that, for me, I would want to hear from the Capital Campaign Committee that they either had the pledges in hand or could tell us that they were reasonably certain that within a short period of time they would have the pledges in hand before I was willing to say, let's break ground. And I would defer also to experts in capital campaigns who would be able to tell us, based on history, how that happens. I wouldn't be ready to break ground if the capital campaign said, and that's not just mean they have the cash in hand, but the pledges. I wouldn't be willing to break ground if they had half the pledges in hand and they said, well, I think in the next 2 years we can get the other half of pledges. That would be hard for me. So I'm really going to be relying on that capital campaign committee to inform me. I don't know how the other board members would feel about that those pledges were in hand or were to be in hand very shortly.
Well, Rick had mentioned there will be language in the bond that gets
Right, yeah.
approved.
But I think the bond language is separate. I think Richard's question is key. I mean, if we get the bond approved, okay, we've got that money and we've got that commitment there, and we can tap that commitment when we need it, whenever those pledges come in. But the decision when to break ground really is going to depend on the Capital Campaign Committee's success and where they are, and they're going to have to inform us on that.
Well, it's within our purview to put that wording in the bond if we want to.
Yeah.
So we will not break ground unless and until we can put that in the.
Yeah, that could be.
And remember, we're not going to get the shovels out in December. There is a propitious time to break ground anyway. So all of that will be ramped up. Joan reminded me of my last thing, which had gotten lost in my little stars of things to say out loud. I think when you characterize that the architect's work is done for right now, they go fallow, and while we do our work, one of the things that I heard on the selection of Reed and Company was that they were really good at bringing stuff to the communities. And I would very much urge, unless there's 3,500 good reasons not to make them partners in this outreach to the community.
Yes, they do. They will do work for us. They will do brochures for us. They're going to introduce me to people down in Cape Elizabeth who did this kind of stuff. When I say that their work is done, they're not going to spend much more time over whether it's a bay window or a flat window, whether there's an extra course of yellow brick in there or not. That needs to can wait for a while. Same with if we decide to do an open space on the roof. That can wait. But they're not going away in terms of filling us with materials, drawings, paintings, models, whatever it takes to help us do this. Yes.
Let me just put a finer point on it. Will they come up for 5 village meetings where they can be the actual source, rather than you say, I don't know what a truss roof is, where people can pose concerns, questions, gratitude, etc., to the Reed team themselves in situ?
Okay, let me answer that with two comments. One is the ad hoc committee people that ran the July 20th meeting got a great deal of praise from the community for being knowledgeable and having the materials and not having to depend on the architects. And I would like to continue working that way. That being said, yes, they would certainly come up. I don't know if they want to come up for 5 meetings, but they'll come up for a few meetings. Yes, they will take part in that stuff. They don't get paid until a building gets built. They have no interest in the drawings that go on the shelf. They want to help us build a library, and they understand that these things can take years. That architects who work in municipalities know that. So, yes, they are not disappearing. They are not disappearing. It's just that we're not going to see next week. I'm not expecting to see any more renderings from them. We know what our work is.
Except the ones that we haven't seen yet.
Except the ones you haven't seen yet.
They already exist, though.
That already exists. But
Okay.
I mean, that's all helpful.
Okay, let's try to keep focused here.
No,
Brendan?
I was just going to point out to support Jan's point. These renderings that you're actually looking at, the ad hoc library planning committee didn't even have to ask for them. They were anticipated and prepared in advance. That's the level of responsiveness that the architect has provided so far, and I don't think that's reasonable to expect.
You think it's more than?
Yeah, from here on out, I think that level of proactive, anticipatory work is beyond reasonable to expect.
Okay.
Okay. Owen?
I'm sorry, I'm still digesting that one. But anyway, in the thing that was given to us, I think it was written up by Rick. In the end, a compromise was established that brought the quote total square footage in at around 9,300 square feet, which is all inclusive. Is that the total square footage?
Total square foot.
Unassignable space,
Everything.
assignable space,
Walls,
walls,
toilets,
bathrooms,
you
toilets, stink
Everything.
pipes.
Total.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
Okay. Then let's move on and start discussing. First, are we good with this design? We've asked them to provide us with a design, a concept.
The concept.
How things would lay out inside, what, in this case here, what we see up here on the screen is what the exterior looks like, given the current plan. Jan has mentioned that there are a couple of open issues still, like, the bay window, whether it's that or flat, but, these are minor details on that. Whether the it looks like a chimney or it just is a roof structure up there. Are we good with that?
I am.
I'd be happy to support it.
I'd be happy to support it.
I think I have one last question, because I totally dug the roof garden. I thought it was awesome. I went and I met with Jim, and
Okay.
Jim was saying nobody
Question.
liked it, and I said I totally like it. So the question is this what we're seeing in response to the focus group feedback that you got from the people that attended the meetings? Was the decision to shelve the roof garden and go with this traditional roof in response to citizens' input that you got during those focus groups? Because I totally dug it. I thought it was awesome.
Pretty much, yes.
Okay.
The last meeting that we had, Reed and Company showed up with a dozen brand-new drawings of all kinds of different possibilities. They were in the focus groups. They were in our meetings where we were debating back and forth.
Reed and Company,
They
not-
heard comments from Rich about how it's not a total necessity, and B, it's a hard sell. They heard comments from Ben saying, don't have to have that, need other things. So they responded to that. Their interest is in also having us put forth a building that the community will build. So they came in with this, and I had talked to Dick on the phone before the meeting several days, and I said, I don't want you to bring in anything that you don't believe in. And they said, we won't. And they were also in favor of this roof design for the whole variety of reasons that it would fit the community better. It would do everything that we wanted to do. It didn't have the playfulness of the other roof design, which I also am a big fan of. But there are a couple of places where carve-outs could be made here for smaller roof designs. As I say, the roof design is still an open question for my committee.
Okay.
Well, but the thing is that we need to agree on something before we can
Right.
consider how much we're gonna ask the voters to support. Because that's the question, they're gonna go back, well, what are we voting on? You know, and if we say, well, it might be this,
Well,
but it
what-
might not.
What I just
Yeah.
heard Jan say
Yeah.
is that, and what I saw in the plans earlier, is that picture right there
Mm-hmm.
may or may not involve an exterior roof space on the far side of the building that you can't see in that rendering. So,
That was reserved for the idea of solar panels or
what I
something
also
like that.
heard is that that decision is not going to significantly change the cost of
Hmm.
either the idea that
Mm-hmm.
we are putting forth,
Or the overall exterior look.
or the overall exterior look, or a significant change in cost.
Right.
Our citizens may not agree with that, with those various assessments, but that's the way the architects feel, that's the way the ad hoc library planning committee feels. So, I don't think we should be getting too nitty-gritty about what it is that we are approving. I mean, I can't tell whether that's a granite element above the window and whether or not it is proud of the brick or whether it is flush, and I don't think that's our business.
No, at this point, as I said, when I said I support this, I support it with the idea that there is wiggle room for little changes here and there, but I support the, as Rick said, the concept, the general concept. I like it.
Do we see, I'm gonna say, chimed in and said I would support it because there's no time to do anything else if we wanna go for November. And I understand all the reasons to go to November. I also put myself squarely in Owen's camp in that, as an individual, I liked that previous iteration. And so the question is, I just need for you as the chair of the committee to say, you feel as though you've spoken to enough of Rockport that is, you know, what Rockport feels. And that's the only thing that my suggestions or my, you know, sort of permission from 1 out of 5 to go longer would help you with.
Let me just say that we are not done talking to Rockport. The plan for the roof will be part of the ongoing conversation. This is likely to be the first thing that people see instead of the second thing that they see. But if we hear an upswell for roof porches, I have at least half the votes already on the committee who want to do that. And the assurance from the architects that it is not going to be significantly different in terms of their what they need to do and what it's going to cost.
So I applaud
So
that.
the
I applaud
wiggle
that
room is
process.
still there.
Yeah.
And the point is, that what our vote tonight would be is an amount or percentage not to exceed
I
a
get
certain
that.
amount.
I get that.
So if a change comes along that everybody wants to agree on and increases the cost, it's not changing the amount of the bond that we're asking the people to vote on.
And that's only 150 difference anyway, right?
It's not very much difference, no. I don't have an exact number, but it's not very much difference.
Well, you know, as Everett Dirksen used to say, $1 million here, $1 million there, pretty soon
Pretty
we're
soon it's
talking
right.
real money.
Yeah.
I just actually want to point out, I mean, we've talked a little bit about the small difference in costs between, you know, various different roof treatments. And that's important and little impact to the program. But from what I've talked to people, the difference in appearance is a big deal. Even though it isn't much of a change in costs and it isn't going to change the amount of the bond and things like that. So it's a big deal to people, and it could sink or swim this thing.
Are
So
you
it's-
including the clabbered vernacular in that description?
It's very
Yeah,
difficult
I
to
think
find out
the roof garden design, which I was,
Right.
I told people I would have to get used to it. And that's the sort of feedback I got from residents too. I didn't hate it. I didn't think it was the best thing in the world to come down the road or whatever. But I think we need to be cognizant. We can't talk only about cost, because what is going to lead the citizens to approve this is how they perceive it. And if it's only a small amount of money, for some people, a small amount of money difference in cost, but they don't like it, then they're not going to vote for it. So that's
you know,
the
the thing
the
is-
input we have to have. So we have to be a little careful, I think, about saying, well, this is what we approve, but for just a little bit different money, not much cost, we can change the look of the thing dramatically. And I
And-
don't think that's necessary. I think the people want us to make a decision on this.
And the thing is that, you know, if we ask 100 people what they think about this, we will have 100 different answers. Like you said, I don't like the lintels above the window. Somebody else will say, I don't like the 2/2 on the window structure. I want 6/1. And you'll go right on down that. What we need to do is this what will serve the needs of Rockport for the next 20 to 50 years as a public building? And is it in the best interest because it's the most feasibly responsible? Fiscally, thank
And
you.
does it- and does
The
it-
fiscally responsible solution. You know, we're looking at brick, because brick requires, yes, it's a little
get
bit
that.
more expensive to put it up, but it is the least, or lesser expensive to maintain. You know, we want thermal pane windows, we want this, because those are the most responsible aspects. What we now need to do is, do we want to ask them in November? And if so, what do we want to ask them to support? We've heard from the capital campaign committee that they feel that they could easily raise the $2 million in a couple years. You know, and I won't.
I don't think they used the word easily.
I don't think they said
Well, they said they could do it, yeah, you know.
Said it would
But
be hard work.
they could have it done within a couple of years.
I think we
Which
had-
you know, to me means it's not gonna be something that they're gonna end up having to spend 5 years on because it's become too tough. But rather that they can get it done with the right resources and the right initiatives.
Can I make a motion?
Go ahead.
I move we approve to support a bond of 50% of the total project cost of the library, not to exceed $2.25 million.
The total project cost,
No, the bond, which is 50%.
bond, okay.
Yeah, that goes to 4.5, which includes 350 for the intersection if the state doesn't come through with it. Because that's the responsible thing to do. And it includes 125 of whatever's left over. But we don't have to spend it. And comma, there you are.
This is quite a motion.
No, you interrupted the motion. And groundbreaking not to occur until 80% of pledges are received. Do you want me to put that in? I did not say those last 19 words.
The 80% puts it kind of,
I think that's a decision we have to make. as a
Yeah.
board.
That's why I put it in motion form.
Okay, do we have a second?
I don't know what I'm
For discussion.
Can we go to discussion?
I'll second it for discussion purposes.
Oh, okay.
But I have a lot of discussion on it.
Now, as I understood, what you really mean in your motion is 50% of the total cost, not to exceed $2.25 million.
Which 50% is of 4.5, yes.
Meaning 4.5 total,
Yes.
which includes the road work.
Which
Yeah.
In the park.
allows us to include the road work in the
Yeah,
thing.
if
it
money
happens.
doesn't come in from other means.
Right.
Okay,
Because otherwise, we're ignoring a big elephant.
so what happens if we get, say, 45%, the other 50% only comes up to 45% of that? But we don't need to do, well, we won't worry about the road. Does that mean we then
Well, if the
spend
roads-
2.25 and the fundraising is only,
No,
1.75?
no, it's matched. It's 50% of the cost, but the cost not to exceed is to, all I've done is said, town pays a 50, and the whole project doesn't exceed 4.5. It's really quite that simple. And
Okay.
so half of the money comes from donations, whatever half of the ending cost is, and what I'm allowing for is not painless because it comes out of people's pockets, but I'm allowing for a mechanism where if the state decides we're not number 1, 2, or 3 on their priority, and they say 10 years, that we can get the intersection done at the same time because of the efficiencies, pointing to Jan, who mentioned that.
But you have withdrawn the idea of we will break ground when 80% of the,
I never said those words.
okay,
I didn't hear him.
okay.
Okay.
And I
Why do we
believe- and I-
not,
and I
why do
believe
we
the
not
second-
like that? Why do we
Well,
not
I think it's
like
too much
that?
discussion.
Ken wants to talk.
Ken wants to talk, please.
A couple things. The road, first of all. I would advocate for not including the road in the motion, the reason being that if there is going to be DOT funding, that they're not going to want to have it wrapped up in the library project. That's what I heard earlier.
Right.
And so I would suggest that. On the amount, and the wording of the amount, I thought about this actually before I came, because I would rather see us approve bonding authority up to a certain amount without mentioning the percentage of the project. Or even the total aggregate cost of the project, and here's the reason why. We approve an amount for bonding, if you want to use your amount, 2.25, okay? Now let's be optimistic, and let's say that the fundraising is wildly successful. And one of the donors wants to specifically provide some money as part of his pledge to
His or her pledge.
his or her pledge, okay, to provide the library with a really super piece of audio-visual equipment that would allow great expansion of programs. I think, and I'm thinking back to the high school in terms of this, where the private money came in and was
Strom.
raised for the Strom Auditorium. I don't think we necessarily want to close off that possibility.
Well, there is a difference between outright gifts and basic structural
I
support.
understand that, but this budget included fit and fixture, I believe.
Right.
And so maybe there's some fixtures. I mean, you could easily spend an extra $500,000 on fixtures for the building if you wanted to, and if there were private donations were there to do it, then we should have the ability to do that.
Can I ask just a devil's advocate question? If we don't make any reference to the percentage, are we leaving ourselves open to
A $2 million
the
library.
notion that we might be funding 3/4 of the library and people aren't happy with that?
You might be. And then the devil's advocate question is, if that happens, and that's the only thing we can do, if the taxpayers have said we're willing to support $2 million of this, and we can't get the donations, do we then go back and get a different plan and build a smaller library, or do we continue to rent out on Route 1 for another 10 years?
That's a good question.
Is that a question you literally want to answer tonight?
But that's true of any
that's
number
another-
you get.
We need to consider that.
Yeah. It's something we might need to think about, and maybe they don't come up to 1.5 million, and you can shave 500,000 off this and come up with a reasonable, I don't know, but I would like the idea, I like more the idea of approving a certain amount for bonding, and not necessarily tying it to the project cost. Knowing that we have this plan in front of us, it's projected to cost for, I mean, the implication is there that it's a 50-50 mix. But I don't want to paint ourselves into a corner if the percentages don't come out perfectly right and there's another path forward.
Okay. Owen?
Is Rockport the weirdest town in the state, or?
We're just approaching this. Owen, did you want to say something?
I mean, my whole thing has always been, I'm not concerned with the size, I'm not concerned with the cost until you're starting to talk about what the taxpayers feel. So I've always been okay with a nice-ish or, large-ish building as long as the taxpayers aren't on the hook for it. So I don't have really any problem with saying, halvesies has always kind of been my thing. Halvesies, let's just go halvesies on it. And I actually don't really have any issues with saying that.
The numbers up on there.
Budget
for
numbers.
Bond
this
numbers
bond, this bond, this bond.
And I'm also I don't mind the idea of saying that we won't break ground until a certain percentage of the fundraising has been done, because that's in keeping with, no, we are not going to stick you with this full bill. So I'm okay with some compilation of what we've all talked about real quick. Oh, and now that it's up here, I'm totally confused. Top spreadsheet, third column from the left, estimated average increase. I'm only confused why the bond amount goes up by 500,000 evenly, yet the estimated average increase does not go up incrementally evenly, and not even like in keeping with interest going up. The difference between the first $1,018.04 to $36, that's $18 difference in change. But then the next step up is only $10 in change. But then the step up from that goes to $15 in change.
Well, the easiest thing to do is say 1 million is 18, 2 million is, why isn't it 3608?
Don't know, these are numbers from Megan.
These are the magic numbers.
I think.
It's compounding, it's
Probably.
interest.
Although it shouldn't be.
But the
that.
compounding
But
is the
then
same, it's the
when
same
you
formula.
add,
The trend
Yeah.
should
You're
continue.
talking about the annual payment per bond, or what are you talking about?
Annual estimated average
Average
increase.
increase
yeah.
in your property taxes. And why that doesn't go uniformly
Doubling,
one to another, to another, to another.
That is a compound.
and then it's increasing.
I do have to go back to the old argument of Jeff, now that Jan and I,
The reason is, the more that you borrow, the more the mill rate has to go up.
Right.
So it's not the same, you're not looking at 1 million and then 2 million, same mill rate. You're looking at 1 million, 2 million, different mill rates.
I get that, and I guess what was confusing me was the fact that it fluctuated and not systematically up or systematically down. It went up and then down.
This I got from Megan.
Okay.
see here, the annual payment on 1 and 2 million is twice. That
Right.
makes sense.
Don't know, I can't answer that question.
Oh, no, you know what it is? Your second chart, and this is where I disagree with your thing. Go to the last frame. That's the one that takes into account the supposed, we're not renting the library anymore, so therefore it's less. To me, that's a specious argument that should not be presented as a.
Dr. Bill. he
I
asked me
will.
to.
I am. That's really silly. Because we're going to rent up until we have the new library going. It's not an either
We're
or.
not gonna start taking out the bond until after we've broken ground. We will get a construction bond in the interim period.
And we'll be paying interest.
Which will, but that will be a short term, and then we will take out the full bond once we get closer to the end. And that's when, as you're closer to the end, there's less need to rent. The rental period is gonna reduce, because eventually we're gonna open that building.
Right.
And it's not gonna be 3 years after we break ground,
No, a year and a half.
at most.
So I said a year and a half.
Okay. But, and after that, we're not paying rent anymore. It's gone. The rent is gone.
Right,
Now it's, we're
but you
paying-
wouldn't, in no situation would you pay rent for 20 years over the life of the bond. That's why saying that every single year you don't have that rental payment is specious, because there's nothing, any
But if-
combination of
If we
mistakes
don't
we
take
make.
out the bond, if we don't build a new building, we're gonna do something. If we stay there, we're gonna continue to pay, actually, we're gonna continue to pay more and more each year, because
Right.
after a few years, the escalators start kicking in. Or we'll go look for another building to use.
To rent, yeah.
Joan,
Well, finish that. I just wanted to get back to the percentage question about putting that in bond language. Or I just want to be really clear that our group fundraising feels like we are willing to work as hard as we can to make 2 million. But I don't think we would say, leave it open-ended, we'll pay 50%. You see what I'm saying? I mean, we're assuming from the amount that's been given to us that would probably look like, or hopefully be 50%. But I think 2 million is our top number that we feel is reasonable to.
So it would be better to characterize as a private donation of up to 2 million.
Right.
Rather than 50% of
Right.
whatever happens. Thank you. That's important.
okay. We still have the motion on the table, which reads the
well, until we
50%
have a
and
better one, I won't.
2.25.
But that's important information for us to know, that we just can't go willy-nilly committing them to another $25,000. Not 250. 250, yeah.
250,000.
When do we have to have this decision made by? Obviously, preferably tonight.
Tonight.
But, well, I said preferably tonight,
No,
but do we
we're
have
running
to
out of
have it?
Public hearings and all that kind of stuff.
Because the bond council has to develop language based on what you guys vote on for dollar amounts, and based on the conversation, what that language needs to say, what the limitations of the bond are gonna be, and what the general expectations of the bond are gonna be, based on the conversation that's been had tonight. Whether they can figure that out or not, I don't know, but.
Are you asking because you feel you want more information in order to
Not
make this
necessarily more information, but time when I'm not having a lot of different things going through my head to spend time on this information more specifically.
I think we're getting way into the weeds here on the decisions. Really, the decision you need to make is how much you're willing to go to the voters for and ask.
And I'd like to get into the weeds on that, because that's other people's money.
Right, but it's, whether, we're renting or not renting, or how we're gonna present, and all, how these things are gonna lay out in the future aren't, we can figure those things out. It's the big question is, how much do you think the voters are willing to support? And then we can calculate out all that once you make that decision.
Jeff, I thought Ken made a compelling argument about stripping the road work out.
No, I was asking him whether he wanted to retract the second and take that particular motion off the table, because I'll be fine in retracting the motion.
I'll retract a second.
Motion off.
Okay, we are now without a motion on the table.
And I'm gonna suggest we take 5 minutes. Just stand up and
Okay.
stretch and get a drink of water.
That's a good idea.
Second.
I'm
gonna also suggest
called.
one of the few
Ready there, Jim?
Yep.
Okay, we're back.
I'd like to make a motion.
Go.
I move to support a bond not to exceed $2 million for a new public library to be built in accordance with the concept presented to this board by the Ad hoc Library Planning Committee.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Let's have some discussion.
It's
Let's
simple.
go build a library, guys.
The ad hoc library committee plan shows a budget of just shy of $4 million. $2 million is about half of that. I think that's where we are, is half and half with this thing, and it's simple and to the point.
Okay.
If somebody came from their house on Mars and came to the voting in November, how would they know and feel good that approximately half of the library was being raised by, the cost of the library is being raised by private funding? Is that
Because-
an additional paragraph, or do they read something outside of the booth?
Because we've taken the time, this board, the ad hoc library committee, and the capital campaign committee, we've talked about all this evening, have taken the time to educate
And
them.
we really think that we're important and that people listen to us, and there's
hard.
500 people who don't. I'm asking, this is,
I understand you're asking the question, but I think Charlton answered it very well tonight. It's gonna be hard work. We have to do this work if we want this thing to pass. If somebody comes to the polls and says, I don't know what I'm voting for, therefore I'm gonna vote no, then that's on us.
all right.
If they say that I know what I'm voting, I know everything, I've learned everything, and I'm still voting no, then that's their decision. But if they say they're voting no because they don't have enough information, then part of this whole process is us, this board, Jan's committee, and Jones committee saying, we're committed to working for this.
For 2 million.
Yep.
We're not, no percentage.
Yeah.
Right.
In conversations with Legal Today, they were saying that they were uncomfortable with the percentage piece, that made them a little uncomfortable to put the percentage in the actual text of the bond. They said there could be an explanatory paragraph after the bond language that could explain some of those other things. But they'll work that up, and they're prepared to come back with several different scenarios of bond language that may make you'll be able to select which one.
Which is what we would be voting to, which one we would put forth on September 8th.
Right.
So does this motion do what it needs to do today, for tonight's meeting?
It does for me, yeah.
Prepares what we need to then.
And your
Have it
conversation,
fleshed out.
and your
So
dialogue.
supported by the dialogue. Mr. Casas has a question.
Because remember, our next item here is to vote to have the warrant article on the November 8th ballot and to hold the public hearing on this on September 8th, which is where we will have it all fleshed out, in different scenarios. September 8th,
September.
Thursday.
I am here on September 8th, not in November.
Owen?
So I understand the reason for pulling the road and the park monies out. My question is, taking the capital campaign committee's number plus our number, yes, it gets us to this $4 million. How do we get the money for the road and the park? A separate?
That would be a separate, that would be a separate budget item that we'd be bringing forward
A
to the voters.
budget item similar to how we did fiber, where we wouldn't be bonding it out, we'd be asking them.
Right.
It could be another bond, but it's not this bond.
Well, and keep
not
in
this
mind too, that there's some possibility that the DOT has some grant money so that number is reduced.
Right.
So it could be handled in an annual budget.
And we may decide we're gonna make that change anyway, at least to the street intersection, separate. If
You know,
the
it's-
occasion
But historically,
occurs.
capital projects of that size would not be an annual budget thing.
In terms of the park, though, I mean, if we get this approved and then we break ground, we may have a couple of budget years to put a little money in a reserve fund to pay
And-
for that park improvement too.
And some of that park may be needed as ancillary construction site, someplace where they put the trailers and things
Sorry
like
about
that.
that.
What?
I'm looking to the neighbors.
It's
We
Richard's
may
front
find
yard.
that the fundraising committee may find there's much more interest in donating money for the park than there is for the library.
Or specifically.
We're not putting you on the spot, Joe.
No, but we are clear, we're only raising money for the building.
Yeah. So-
I mean, but some people, you're right, someone might
Somebody
want to
may-
do something for
Mhm.
the park, which would be totally
Yeah.
fine, yeah.
Do we have further discussion on this motion?
One thing.
Almost.
Right after Brendan made the motion, and I apologize for calling you out, sir, Mr. Bates was doing this interesting eye flutter thing. So I'm curious about your
He's
thoughts.
passing out.
Yeah, it's past
Are-
9:30.
Are you concerned about anything, or is
No,
that
no,
just...
actually, I think that motion is what we need to move forward. You know, I think if the motion was overly complicated and overly complex, it would go to the lawyers and they'd, yeah. And they wouldn't have the flexibility they need to come back with something that will serve your purposes. I think the motion is exactly what we need. It's clear, concise, it picks a number, and once you do that, then we can start filling in all those other blanks. But until you make that decision, we can't move forward. We're at that point again where we need the board to take a step so that we can start filling in all the other blanks. And the committee needs that as well.
And we're not concerned about the lack of a groundbreaking tying this with something with the capital campaign committee.
No.
Not that you have to come up with a certain amount of the overall, but once you have reached a certain percentage, then we are authorizing the breaking of the ground.
It's not in here.
Yeah.
Not in here, it's not
No,
intended to
I
be in here.
know that it's not in there.
To be determined.
Yeah.
And I think that's a decision
When-
this board will have to make an ongoing process. We'll have to evaluate. You know, when the capital campaign comes to us and says they've raised enough money, then we'll make a decision to break ground. They may come to us and say, well, we've raised $1 million and we think we have another $500,000, and we may say, no, we're not ready to break ground yet.
Yeah,
at
if
that
there are
point.
folks in the public who want to hear our take on this, that 80% is not close enough to me.
It isn't for me
Too
either.
far away.
It isn't for me
We-
either.
So
Because
you're-
one of the
you're
things we
95?
need to keep in mind is,
I'm in there.
even if we think we're close to that money, this still has to go out to bid.
Yep.
And,
But
you
I
know,
think
who
in
comes
eight-
in with a bid, you know,
think in
it
eight-
may be that at the 80% mark, we send it out to bid, because as we've learned from other items recently, that some of these bids come in way lower than we're thinking they are. But again,
Some going higher.
again.
We have
again,
professionals
you know,
advising
if we
us
wait
here, so.
all the way until they have 100%, you know, that may be beyond where we want to be.
That discussion doesn't have anything to do with
Yeah,
the
it
motion.
has
on the
nothing to
floor.
do with this.
And the point was, I don't think we need that in that motion. That'll be an ongoing decision. This board is gonna have to be involved in making these decisions all the way along the process. This is the decision we have to make tonight.
Okay.
Further discussion?
Everybody know what we're voting on?
Mm-hmm.
Should we read it again?
Do we want it read again?
I'm fine.
Okay, I will call for the vote. All in favor of the motion on the table? That is unanimous. Now we need to vote on holding a public hearing on the warrant articles, because there are gonna be several, well, 3. With holding the public hearing on September 8th in preparation for the special town meeting warrant, which would be voted on in secret ballot on November 8th.
I move to hold a public hearing on the warrant articles for the November 8th, 2016 special town meeting warrant on Thursday, September 8th, 2016 at 7 PM in the Rockport Opera House Meeting Room.
Second?
Moved and seconded. And I have it under good authority that this meeting room is available that evening.
Do we think this meeting room
Thank you, Jan.
will be big enough? Do we need to go upstairs?
That is a good question.
Leaving the party.
Do we,
For a public hearing?
for a public hearing?
On the library? Where the library's involved? I mean, I'm okay with leaving it. We can always move upstairs at the last minute if we have to.
This is a Thursday?
Yeah.
Yes.
Just a guess, we have had a very successful, Terry Lee has had a very successful time in filling the weekends on September and October and November.
Yeah.
But being a Thursday, the worst, I'm guessing that might happen is that somebody's plays set might be in place. You know, the
Upstairs.
upstairs, yeah. So let's
But we,
pretend, let's
but Bay
pretend.
Chamber is not holding an event upstairs that
September
night.
8th.
September 8th. The Thursday after Labor Day.
Let's just go ahead and pretend
Yeah,
that
I-
upstairs is
yeah.
available if we choose.
I know we have communicated it. We
Yeah, we-
can determine,
Pack in, we can pack it in, we'll make it stand.
Yeah,
It's
I mean,
not-
we typically don't get a huge number.
I'm
of
just
people.
asking the question,
Yeah,
that's all.
that's a good question.
I think for now, we can go with it here. If we start hearing that we need to move it upstairs, we can always move it. It's in the same building. Or we could just strike the two words, meeting room.
Yeah, you know, I think if there was a lot of angst and controversy over the plan, you might want to think that, but, you know, I think we're targeting in on something that people are saying.
A2 Butte?
We're- I think we're targeting in on something that people are, you know, we're not, as Richard said, you're not gonna see a huge movement of opposition. You know, some people will vote
Nothing on
no,
the Opera House calendar.
but, you know, it's
Okay.
not like there's a lot of controversy here at this point.
Okay. Further discussion? Hearing none, call for the vote on the motion, and that is unanimous. This next, oh, actually, you know,
Is there an opportunity to
Oh.
offer any other new business? Or perhaps a thought for a future, directive from this board?
That's safer.
on,
About the library before we leave it?
since we're still on the library in theory, what do you have to say?
I feel pretty strongly that the voters ought to be able to look at a model of the library the day that they are voting it. Should be able to be in the room, read a little bit about it, and see the darn thing. And I would prefer, I think, to talk to the ad hoc library planning committee about that. Done this professionally for a while, and renderings aren't the same as models.
There is the
I'm-
physical structure that is easier to understand.
Doesn't need
Yeah,
to be big or detailed. We've got we will have nice renderings.
Yeah.
But some of those people are gonna walk in without having.
How
See-
much of
seen
the
anything.
area, though, wants to be included within that
I wouldn't
model?
presume to say right now, but I think
Well, I
with
think,
the right effort, we could get some,
I think you as liaison from this board to the ad hoc library planning committee can talk to them and the architect about it and maybe come back with a recommendation.
okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, the only question I have is a Linda and State question in terms of, is that campaigning inside the polling place?
Yes, it is. Because
And-
when we did the town office, we were not allowed to have a model during absentee voting because that could be considered swing voters.
Just physically showing what it is that they're voting on.
Ain't America wonderful?
Fascinating.
Yeah. Okay.
But it's not to say that we couldn't have it someplace else.
We can do something.
At the
I still
library.
like the idea of telling people to show up. Tell them they're gonna wear 3D glasses and show up and
Well,
look at it.
I'm not gonna be able to do that. I can tell you right now, I don't have the computer power to do that. Unless you wanna give me a bunch of money to buy a super.
Well, I would ask the architects to do it.
Well,
I mean,
but
I'm
the thing
actually
is,
Yeah.
you know, as I said, there are
Yeah,
CAD
easy.
programs out there now that, you know, effectively, you can circle all the way around,
I mean,
pull up, pull in.
Let's
and
let
see these things.
Brendan talk to the ad hoc library
Okay.
committee about the whole issue and see where they wanna go with that as far as the education piece.
I didn't realize we
Combining
might
with the
actually be
architect.
prohibited from showing it.
Now,
It seems kind of counterintuitive to present
Okay.
something factual, but.
okay, well, we're sort of still on this about the warrant and the public hearing. Attached to our information are the other two articles dealing with the road acceptance ordinance and the sidewalk ordinance. And of course, there's the planning, the public hearing for the planning department. And then we do have the change that is being recommended to the municipal road acceptance ordinance. And they are in red the changes that they have recommended. So this is an opportunity to become acquainted with it, but those are the other items that we will be hearing on September 8th and voting on whether or not to place on it. I assume the planning board will have met before, because I think that's what they say the Wednesday, August 24th meeting is. So, yes, it is the planning board. So I'm just letting you know that. We now move on. The next item, item G, I'd like to recommend that we call a special town meeting on Tuesday, August 30th, and propose to our voters the question if they want to send the municipal solid waste to the MRC facility, otherwise known as Fiberite, to be built up in Hamden. A couple of things that you may not be aware of that I just found out today. If you recall, at the last Midco Solid Waste Board meeting, the board was split 4-4, even though by percentage, it was like 51 or 52% was opposed to calling special town meetings. I have not heard for sure, but I was told by somebody who would know that there was an executive session this evening at 5:30 up in Lincolnville where they had their town attorney appearing to give them guidance on how they could remove an appointed officer. The officer being because she was approached earlier and told that she would vote the way Lincolnville voted or lose her seat on Midco Solid Waste, that being Cindy Gary.
Ann America Grand.
What?
I just said Ann America Grand.
Yeah.
Wait.
That they are removing her from the board and replacing her with another person on Midco Solid Waste.
Because they didn't like what she did? I mean,
Yep.
I don't like what she did, but still, it doesn't make sense to me.
The way that both the interlocal agreement is worded says effectively that the appointees serve at the pleasure of the board that appoints them. And that
it's
they
the
can
Midco's
remove
board.
them for any time without cause. They don't have to give any cause. And as I was sort of informed today, though it wasn't from a pure legal opinion, any board can remove any member under state law if they have appointed them. What cannot be done is you cannot remove an elected official. We cannot remove a member of the library committee or the budget committee because they have been elected.
By our charter, we can't remove them from any other board without a
totally.
hearing.
That's by our charter.
I don't know what Lincolnville has in their charter.
I don't think Lincolnville has a charter.
Well,
They might, and it may
Okay.
say something different.
How does that affect our decision to hold a meeting?
Oh, well, where I was going with this is that when the special Midco Solid Waste meeting happens on on Wednesday, I am sure that either John French or Leonard Lickner or Art Doherty are gonna make a motion to call special town meetings to, again, support a motion to send our trash to Eco Maine.
Okay.
Even though
more to the point.
three of the towns have voted not to do that at this point.
let's either do one of two things. Let's talk about what Rockport should do, in regardless of what happens at the thing. We should set up for a town meeting. We should do it early so people know, to ask the only question that is the first question that makes sense because of the time limit. The first question should be, do you support Fiberite? Because we only have another
We have until the 31st.
16 days, you know, to do that. Whatever, yeah, it's 31st. What the other towns and what the board, Midco Solid Waste Board is doing, almost doesn't matter, that our efforts are in good faith. I thought you were going to the fact that Leonard has said in public
Yeah, that's what I
that
thought,
he
too.
would support, he didn't put two and
Yeah, look
two
at his
together.
timeline.
His
His timeline was messed up. He
Well, his
supports-
timeline's messed up, but
he
I think that
supports
he
it
is
after we
he
can't
is-
make a decision anymore.
he can be convinced to
He was gonna
hold the
support a
vote
vote.
because he would be fine either way, you know, but he wants to say if Camden people in their infinite wisdom chose a particular way that he didn't agree with, he would wash his hands of the whole thing, his words.
Yeah.
But I think that
He said the citizens need to own the.
Right. That's what he said at the meeting. And what you may or may not be aware of is many entries into Facebook conversations where he has said, "Oh, okay, I will support a vote," and then as soon as he recognizes that the only reason that one would vote would be to get that first question done with, either positive or negative, and then go on your merry way. So regardless of what's happening in any other towns, I think that the board may see a move to take it to all 4 towns anyway, regardless of Lincolnville.
Owen
Go ahead,
had his
Ken.
hand
Go
up.
ahead.
I'll come
Ken.
back to you.
Mine's a little longer.
I was just gonna say, I thought we were gonna do this on Thursday after the Midco Solid Waste meeting. I thought that's why we were having a meeting on Thursday, to set the town meeting then.
That would be a situation that we would need if we didn't vote tonight to do it, but we wanted to hear what Midco Solid Waste Board recommended come Wednesday night.
I'm going to slip in before Owen in that I think if Rockport does the right thing and sets a date even prior to the board meeting, we are saying, hey, guys, do the right thing. And it's putting moral pressure if that were an option for
Yeah,
people that feel.
I know, I just want to make sure we're clear on the sequence that we're dealing with here.
Ken.
Owen? Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I was
Oh,
just gonna ask Ken's thought about what the last thing Jeff just said.
Oh,
Ken,
Owen?
do you have thoughts on the last thing Jeff said?
Thanks.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I am planning to suggest at the Midco Solid Waste meeting as a member of the public, that the only way forward for this, the board is split, and I don't see that split
The Midco
tipping.
Solid
Yeah,
Waste
the
Board
Midco
is
Solid Waste Board is split. I don't see that tipping one way or the other. I still have reservations personally about Fiberite. Mostly because of the waste hierarchy and landfills and all that sort of stuff. That doesn't mean that I'm fully on board with Eco Maine either. But I think the way to move forward with it is to have a vote on the Fiberite proposal. And that will allow those who say, that the vote failed in some towns because there wasn't enough education, that'll allow them a chance to do the education. If they do the education and educate people, and then the vote goes no for Fiberite, then that's that. But if the citizens want it, and as Leonard said, if they want to own it, then this gives them an opportunity to do that. So I'm not willing to endorse Fiberite at this point, but
No, I
I'm willing
understand
to
it.
move
Support the
forward
vote.
with a vote.
So is there any downside
Yes.
to not waiting for Wednesday? Yes.
So, I've been working relatively hard at trying to have people being open to bringing Fiberite to their citizens. And one thing that's made it somewhat palatable is, and Rick, I'd love to hear your thoughts on our conversation that we had on the ability to have one motion, 2 options. The reason being...
Either or, meaning send it here, send it there?
What I would really like to see is this. The motion is to, when we'll work out the language later, where do we send our solid waste post 2018? All those in favor of Eco Maine, raise your hand. Count them up. All those in favor of Fiberite, raise your hand. Count them up. Whoever wins, but all done within one motion. Now, the reason for it being, it's a really tough sell for people that are in favor of Eco Maine that they would only propose Fiberite. So having the ability to have both of them, Eco Maine and Fiberite, do a head-to-head competition, if you will, is easier for the people that are in favor of Eco Maine to digest than simply, and try as you might to say,
Pardon the pun?
you did the Eco Maine and it got rejected. So do the Fiberite and see what it does. That's a tough sell, even though it could get you rejected, and then we'd have to go with Eco Maine. But putting them as a side-by-side comparison seems to be a little more palatable for people because their option is still in it. So the only I'm concerned about this language because I've already had calls from people that sit on that board with us that this language does not talk about the solid waste board and only names Fiberite, looking as though the perception could be that if this vote passes, we'll start our own separation from the Solid Waste Corporation if another town goes in a different direction. Only perception,
And I
I'm not
would
saying
put
it's
to
fact.
you is that the other towns are withdrawing from Midco Solid Waste. Because right now, the towns have a contract through MRC to send their waste to PERC. We use the transfer station to accumulate that and simplify the transport of it to it. That's why it's coming back to the towns to vote on, because that is what's required. If we agree to stay with MRC, then we're still part of MRC, and hence the transfer station. Let me finish.
I'll let you finish.
Thank you. That if the other three towns go another way, then we would probably want to rethink it. But what happens if Hope decides to go with us? Now, Lincolnville's already taken their vote, and they would be quite happy, I'm sure. We don't need, our citizens have already said overwhelmingly, we're sending it to Eco Maine.
This is like weeks ago. You're talking
This
about
was back in June.
their vote.
Yes. If it comes down to there's two towns going one way, two towns going the other way, it's really pretty simple. Load A goes south, load B goes north. At the end of the year, we balance out what the differences are in transportation and tip costs,
Right.
and put that back onto the citizens of the towns that have the most on that. We would still be participating in the benefits that MRC
Right.
would be. The towns that vote no would be
gonna slip another
participating in the Eco Maine. The idea that, we're gonna get $1.5 million when we pull out of MRC, I put to you, goes back to the towns.
Yep.
Because the towns are the signatories on that agreement, not Midco Solid Waste. Right now, because all four towns are participating with MRC, they are all sharing in the rebates coming back from PERC, and can therefore be used to reduce the cost of the bag, disposal.
So let me just jump in here and ask a question, if I may. And your advocacy and your explanation, I agree with, but I'm not sure how any of that, well, I'm not sure how something that would appear on a piece of paper in a vote, even though it's not a secret vote, it's a town meeting, so there's bodies there. You can give that explanation, particularly after you've taken a breath. It doesn't, asking the question, putting the two up, A or B, Fiberite or Eco Maine, in and of itself doesn't answer that question. So, Owen, are you satisfied with that being part of the speechifying up to and prior to people raising their hands? You're concerned, you want to package this in such a way that you can say to the people that are concerned about two things. One, they're concerned about the fact that Eco Maine doesn't even get a mention if we go and say the first vote we have to do is to either accept or reject Fiberite. I get that. That's fine. But a simple ballot that says, do you want to go north or south, doesn't in and of itself explain what would happen if things are split. And so there's probably going to be some arguments, but I think that Bill's assessment is certainly could be one of the more reasonable arguments.
I'm going to jump in. First of all, when we took the vote in June, it only said Eco Maine.
Right, and it got rejected.
But there was a lot of discussion on the floor about Fiberite. If this question is about MRC and Fiberite, there can still be a lot of discussion on the floor about Eco Maine and making the comparison, just like there were the argument for and against Eco Maine, for and against Fiberite at the June town meetings.
So let me just be messy here. Do you not endorse Owen's suggestion of actually having?
We can't
We can't do that.
It's a structure. It's a structure that's not allowed.
Yeah, you can't have a multiple. As much as I like the idea,
and that's a state thing.
And that's
Yeah.
not a golly at you, it's a
Yeah, I
golly
know.
at the process.
To me, it makes sense to just hold your hand up and ask the question, which do you
Right.
like? But you can't have the warrant article worded as a multiple choice. You know, it can't, but.
Because there's always, in that case, a third choice.
That's right.
But you could have two different articles. I mean, you run the risk of both passing or
Run the
both
risk of
failing.
an inconsistent result.
Yeah, you run the risk, but I mean, at least you have people in the room, and if it comes out inconsistent, you can say, we're gonna keep voting until we get a solution.
How can you have a second vote if if the majority of the room wants one thing on the first vote?
If it's on the
Well,
warrant,
if
you
it's
have
all-
to have it.
If a majority wants one thing, you're good. But if
But the thing is, if it's,
Intelligent individuals would not, it would not happen.
it
would not
But
happen.
It can happen. I mean,
Well,
That was artfully done.
The
somebody
thing
says, I
is-
like both of them.
Yeah, exactly. I don't care where it goes,
Chances
just
of that
send
hap-
it there.
the chance
so
of it
they-
happening
so they
is
both,
slim.
They stand up both for Article 1 and Article 2. Okay, Owen, I'm gonna get back to you. Ken wants to speak.
First of all, early in your thing, I think you misspoke, because you said the vote would effectively withdraw them from Midco Solid Waste. I think you meant to say MRC. Because if they vote
Yes.
one way or another, and
Okay.
that one got me going there for a minute. So they would still be part of Midco Solid Waste, at least for some period of time.
We're all members of
Yeah, I
Midco Solid
understand,
Waste.
but I just want to make that clear. As far as the multiple choice question, we can't do it because of what's already been said, but you run the risk of a less than majority vote. Especially if somebody could very easily say, well, why not include PERC in the mix? Some people say that's not an option, but I think it's an option. And then you have three of them, and then you end up with a situation where none of them gets 50%. So it's not good. So I'm okay with pushing forward a vote on MRC. I don't know, I thought we were gonna do it on Thursday, rather than tonight, but if the board wants to do it tonight, I'm okay with the vote, as long as it doesn't imply an endorsement by this board. I'm not there yet for that.
Okay, Owen?
My concern with this is, again, on perception and my ability to help other towns bring a similar motion to their towns. If the perception is that there is not uniformity, that Rockport has kind of gone it alone before our meeting, your minds are already made up, my guess is that it may cause some friction during the Wednesday board meeting, and I would like to reduce that friction at all cost. And so if there's a follow-up to this where we can have the two separate motions, one for EcoMaine, one for Fiber Right, I suppose I could be comfortable voting on that tonight, but especially where I had already received calls that they had been monitoring our agenda, had highlighted this as an agenda item, and that the perception was that we are already attempting to go it alone, and the Solid Waste Corporation be damned, Rockport's going to be doing the right thing. It just may make it harder for them to come around to the idea of just let it be two options for your citizens. So that's my concern with this.
Okay, I will tell you, I won't tell you. I will make a prediction right now on how Wednesday's meeting is gonna go. The meeting will be open. We will take public comment from the audience. We will then go into our session. John French.
Should I cut you off before you say something on TV?
No.
Okay, I'm just wondering.
saying, this
because
is
you're
where I
getting-
think it will go.
Okay.
John French will make a motion to have a call public town meeting to endorse the EcoMaine. It will receive 5 votes of roughly 60%, maybe 62%. Based on the weighted voting, it will carry, the meeting will be adjourned. What are we gonna do then?
Can I give a different scenario?
Okay.
John, I hope you stayed up for this, and I appreciate you watching the live stream. There will be a bit of paper given to Mr. French and Mr. Lookner before the meeting. That bit of paper will have 60-plus signatures from Camden residents exclusively, saying that their vote during Camden Town Meeting was not a vote for more information on Eco Maine, but that they supported Fiberite as an option. I've spent a decent amount of time talking with John about this topic, and I believe that if approached in a certain way, that he would be more open to allowing his citizens to have what would be just a normal thing to let your citizens vote on options other than the ones they've already rejected. But passing this tonight may make that more difficult because already defenses will be up at that point.
I think.
Bill, I'm with you. I'm totally with you.
I think given all the different possibilities we've heard about what may transpire at the Midcoast Solid Waste meeting on Monday from all members of this board, it seems to me to make sense to wait to do this until Thursday.
I agree.
Okay.
I will not be here on Thursday, but I will support you all in making.
But you'll be here there on Wednesday meeting.
Yes, I'll be there Wednesday. I fly out Thursday night, so
Oh.
I can't make a
The
Thursday night meeting.
yeah, you have to fly, because the meeting's 4 o'clock, but you gotta be gone by then.
Thursday's
I
4.
fly out at 7:45. I may be here for a half second, but that means I'm not with my kids before I leave for 10 days.
Okay.
We'll get the helicopter all warmed up for you.
Could you move
You
your
got
meeting
one?
up?
Not anymore. No.
Could we move the meeting up?
Yeah.
Thursday.
Yep, Thursday.
I'm not here, but you don't need me.
No, yeah, you weren't gonna be here anyway.
No, but you don't need me. But, I mean, I think it's important that, if you can.
I'm okay with, you wanna go an hour earlier?
I was gonna say, can we do an AM? I'm
Yeah,
more,
that would be best.
AMs are a lot easier for
Okay.
me.
But it's not gonna be long.
What date are we talking about?
Thursday.
11.
Thursday, 11th?
This
Thursday,
Thursday.
11th. The 11th.
3 days from now.
I'd be okay with 8 AM, but that's just me. Or 7. Or 6. I'm already awake anyway.
We're
It
not
doesn't
gonna
matter.
go that early.
We got some old guys on the board.
You don't know when my 1-year-old
I'm
wakes
okay
up.
with a morning meeting, I'll just have to rearrange some stuff.
Okay, what time in the morning?
8 AM.
Could we possibly do 9?
9 a.m.
9 AM. Can you do 9?
Yep.
Okay.
Can you
that
do
works,
9?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll do it at 9 AM.
I think it's important that the whole board participate in that vote.
Okay.
Is that here because
Here?
because the other thing is?
Oh,
Yeah, the other rooms,
We can always go to the green room. We're sure to have that.
right.
It is a public meeting.
it's a public meeting.
We
We've
can go to
got
the green
a,
room.
Go upstairs if you had to,
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
just to have a meeting.
11th. Bay Chamber is starting up their thing, but if they're upstairs, we could be down here.
okay, at 9 AM.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
They'll have rehearsals. That's the worst.
yeah. Rick, we'll need to put the notice out.
This is gonna take like 10 minutes?
I hope. We've already discussed the whole
I mean,
thing here.
I'm ready to vote, to have the vote. I think the sense among the board is
Yeah.
that we're gonna push this to the citizens, I think. It's just a question of what comes out of that meeting and if there's anything, a
Okay.
surprise or something like, and I think Owen's point is very well taken about, neutering the Midcoast Solid Waste Board, which we don't wanna do.
Yeah, there's just.
And I may have had a different approach tonight, except when you already start getting calls before we even talked about it, the perception is a big thing with the personalities that we all try to manage in our daily
Perception is
lives.
reality.
Okay. All right. We will be here at 9 AM. And we're not having the technology committee meeting at
Right,
4,
right.
so that's, okay. We will put that on hold. The next item, the last item under new business,
I'm never gonna get out there.
we've got the listening tour. Do we want to do a listening tour?
Hell yeah. Sorry.
Heck yeah.
Because what we'll have to do is figure out what days, what dates there are that we're gonna hold them. I would assume we want to have them all complete sometime well before November 8th. If
Yeah,
we want to, if
totally.
we want
And
to,
is this essentially a library listening tour?
well, there's a number of other things
I
there,
know,
but
but,
one of the items that we need to do is
Either
Yeah.
we totally join it with the library ad hoc committee, or we start the listening tour after November 8th. As a select board, I think honestly we started after November 8th. If,
What are you doing?
what am I doing? Well, first of all, it,
Killing me, Smalls.
it
I
doesn't make,
understand your
it doesn't make
purpose,
sense to have both bodies going out and doing separate meetings and having them wrapped up before election. So, let's get the really timely thing, library. Let's get the people who know who have been talking about it intimately for the last year and a half, library. Give them the space to do it between now and November 8th, and then the old guys come along and
Yeah,
sweep it
I
up.
think the other things on this list, if we do it before November 8th, nobody's going to want to talk about them.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
And
Am I killing you there, Owen? I'm killing you. You wanted to be done by
but
then.
if we,
No, I wanted to use it as ability to connect with more voters that may potentially. I was going to ask if we could do a listening tour in
Ulterior
Camden.
motives.
There's a lot more voters in Camden. We could do some listening tours
I'm not
there.
used to
How
have to have
forgetful I am.
Politicians on this
Seriously,
board.
dude. That's
forgetful
why you're
I am.
killing me here. Anything that gets me in front of voters before November 8th,
Well, go out and talk to them about the library.
I do it.
but I mean, there's nothing, if the ad hoc library committee sets up a listening tour, there's no reason we can't jump
You
on
should,
that.
the board definitely needs
Yeah.
to be part of that
We should have at
conversation.
least one member of the board at each of those.
Yeah.
The
each
more
of
we
those
have,
things.
the better.
The more we have, the better, absolutely. But from a twist your arm, it's,
Yeah.
we should each.
Okay.
It
Take
won't
it
move, the library won't move forward without the board actively
No,
promoting.
and not only actively, but supporting and with as few wiggle room things as possible.
Sometimes I'm so slow.
I kept doing this. What are you doing?
Okay.
On purpose.
Brendan, your thoughts?
I'm happy to wait and then, participate in the library until the library's in front of them and then wait on the listening tour.
Okay. Very good. Then we
We
will.
had a couple of items on the listening tour.
Mm-hmm.
I was hoping that the RES use might make it on there. I don't
It's a good
think
idea.
I saw it on there.
Yeah.
I had it on my notes. I
Oh.
didn't make it onto these notes.
Yeah, I missed that one, sorry.
I know of two separate citizens groups who are meeting and talking about that.
Oh,
So I think it'd be great to get that in there too.
mm-hmm. Yep, I had it on my original list, so we will keep that on board. But we won't start this until after November 8th. Okay. Next item is wastewater commissioners. Before we go in, we do not have the information necessary to make a commitment. We will have to make that commitment on the 22nd, so
So there's no point to going.
no point in going in. There's nothing to do. Moving on to liaison reports. Owen, had I asked you about where we stood on the RES backstop?
My understanding is Public Works is gonna be out there doing some field maintenance, similar to what we did at the Babe Ruth Field. When the equipment is there, they're gonna try to do some bandaging over a bullet wound. We all understand that, but they're gonna do the best that they can. Once the rec committee has Marge Jones under control, public bid put out, and everything's set in motion, the next logical step for them is to work on that, or possibly break out a subcommittee or something of that nature. But we are holding off because Marge Jones is capitalizing a lot of our time.
And that is, he's exactly right. Well, we have equipment there, they're gonna try and tweak that up and see if they can make it look better.
Okay. Mm-hmm. A couple of upcoming committee reports. Cemetery, Harbor, and Ordinance Review, or Cemetery and Harbor will be speaking to us on September 8th. We might need to push that back until a latter meeting in September. I've been getting some ideas or thoughts that we may have some business that we have to contend with in that meeting that are higher priority, and I didn't bring my notes on here. I'm just letting you know that maybe we have to push those back, 2 weeks. Again, I won't know until we really start to get to putting together the September
Yeah, I forget what
agenda.
those things were.
I know.
Stacy said to me, well, that's gonna make the meeting longer, and I can't remember what it was.
Yes, exactly. That's
I can't-
exactly what I remember.
I might have remembered at 9, but
Yeah.
10:15, not so much.
Midco Solid Waste held their annual meeting. Art Doherty is, again, the chair. Tom Ford's the vice chair. The secretary is John French. And our own Owen is the treasurer.
Already went in and signed.
Yep. So, and that's all I really have to report.
So the Midco Solid Waste Board meeting, just to totally clarify in Rock, is 6 o'clock
6 o'clock
in this room,
in this room,
televised.
televised.
We hope it's 6?
It is 6.
That was not in reaction to what happened last time.
It's
just
not your fault.
just in reaction to.
It has
my
been published
notes.
as 6 o'clock to all of the board members.
Not much. I talked to Linda the other day about a cemetery meeting. I think she's gonna set one up sometime soon. ORC, I talked about, you know what, I wanted to clarify the sidewalk ordinance. I know you asked Owen, and it was very late the last time, about, you know, the Pathways Committee. One of the reasons that the ORC felt that the ordinance could be repealed is that we have the sidewalk master plan that's been approved by this board, produced by the Pathways Committee, and a lot of the stuff that was in the ordinance is actually in the sidewalk master plan.
Okay.
So there's some duplication there. I meant to mention that the last time, but I forgot, so. And I don't think I have anything else.
I have a question. Is a master plan submitted by a joint committee and approved by the select board as binding as an ordinance is?
Probably not. But it's, I mean, it was voted on by the select board, so it's, you know, we adopted the master plan basically as a guideline for our sidewalk work and pathways
So
work
if
in
we
town.
were to be aware of something that was not necessarily conforming with that master plan approved by us, it would get bounced back to us and we would have to make a decision on it, yay or nay, or whether,
Yeah, we'd have to deal with it as opposed to an ordinance where there could be a penalty.
right.
You know, in other words, you got fined so many dollars a day if you
But
just
we
did
also
something.
Just
don't have.
ensuring that it does come to a body and then it wouldn't, certain things wouldn't slide under and all of a sudden our walkable community becomes less.
Right. And quite honestly, the sidewalk master plan has gotten a lot more attention over the last 10 years than the sidewalk ordinance ever did.
Yeah.
So that
Well,
that
it's
was
seen.
another one of the reasons.
Yeah.
So, Lyndon?
Harbor Committee either has not met or I missed it.
They have that.
I did,
think they've
no, I
met.
don't think so. But we had a special meeting of the Conservation Commission today, which was very informative. Engineers from Gartley and Dorsey came to give us progress report on the feasibility study for
Can we not use those words for about a year and a half?
for means of remediation. That was just a progress report, although the feasibility study is definitely pretty close to being circulated. If I understand correctly, it'll go to Rick and Jamie, I think, and then presumably be shared with all the rest of us. I was initially concerned that nothing was getting done. Clearly, that was not the case, which you guys explained to me. But learned much more today that there's a whole lot getting done.
Nice try. You get A for effort. You get A for effort.
Get a B plus for effort.
Long way of
Evan's the
saying,
winner.
I think we'll have actual reviewable information in front of us pretty soon.
Okay.
Some of that, I don't want to preempt that process. Some of that information is going to be relevant to the wastewater discussions that we had the other day and our role in the headaches that Camden has on account of freshwater influx and all the rest of that. So, I'll wait until we have the report to talk about it any further.
Okay. I tentatively put on our calendar for November 28th to have a workshop with them. If that is too late, let us know. If that's too early, let us know.
Yeah, no, I think it's going to be a question of basically asking a favor of Camden that will initially appear like a total non-starter until we explain why it is that we're asking.
Oh.
It's going to look like we're asking them to take that water, when in fact, we're going to be asking them to help us with a little pilot program to take that water for a short period of time so that we can see if a UV treatment would actually fix things.
We're diverting water, or
What I think is going to happen is that for a short period of time next summer, we would be
Okay.
diverting water, hopefully in a couple of these heavy rain cycles,
Right.
to either one or the both of the pump stations that are right there. Ask Camden to take that water for the sole purpose of being able to measure whether or not the removal of that water results in.
oh,
Okay.
You understand what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
yeah,
But it's
gotcha,
gonna
gotcha.
look to them like we're, unless
Yeah.
it's explained well, it's
Right,
gonna
right.
look like
Yeah.
we're asking them to deal with our problem.
Do you think that needs to be an agenda, one of our agenda items in the coming months, or wait until November for a workshop with them?
So my understanding is that the technical feasibility problem with this so far is that those pump stations may be so close to being overloaded already
Okay.
that they can't handle it. So this pilot program may not even
All
be
right.
Is
feasible.
that
I would
just in
say
heavy
we-
weather events?
Yeah, and so that's the,
So typically they wouldn't be overloaded, but because
That's
we're
what it's
trying to do it
exacerbated.
on a heavy weather event.
yeah, but it's in the summer, not in the
Yeah.
spring, so,
Right.
but they need, we don't yet have the actual volume
Okay.
data from Gartley and Dorsey.
Okay.
Brendan, what I would suggest is on the scheduling of the workshop is that you find out what Bob Kennedy's schedule is, because he's probably
Yes.
going back to Florida, because we definitely want him here
Yep.
for
Yeah.
that workshop.
Right.
So
Yep.
That 28th is after Thanksgiving. I don't know when he's.
Yes,
going
it
down.
is. Okay.
Yep.
Owen? Oh, did.
No, and the
that's-
ad hoc library plan, I mean, you guys know where we are with that.
Sure. One thing, I was out talking to someone on Kimberly Drive, right next to Rockville Street. I asked her to come tonight to speak during public comment because doing it during liaison reports doesn't pack the same punch. She would like some information on the process on how you go about requesting a speed limit reduction on a road. I've told her I would bring it up, and
listening towards a great time to start for us to ask that question or to have it.
Yeah.
what was interesting, and I don't
Hand painted one.
I don't want to digress. That's great. I heard from someone, my neighbor on South Street, that when he approached MDOT to reduce the speed limit on South Street, that one of their technicians came in, started looking at sight lines, and said, "You don't want to send this request in. We're going to up the speed limit." And so I said, "You run the risk of doing that if you ask them to come out and do that sort of inspection." But just wanted to.
Through this a couple
What
years
street is it
ago.
again?
Rockville, and especially
Rockville?
with the new paving, we talked.
Oh, yeah.
You know, we all know when you put the new asphalt down, and it's a cut through, so it's just another one of those roads.
Cut through.
So
Anything else?
Oh, yes. Pathways Committee, Camden is doing their master plan that they'll submit to their people. So we went through the same process we did with ours, which was lay out all the different projects we would like to have done. Everyone gets 6 votes. You can allocate 2 if you think it's great. So we went through and did our voting process, and we'll be deciphering that to figure out what their priorities are for Camden, like we did with Rockport. We spent a lot of time talking about the Riverwalk dedication, which is in Camden. But they're going to be having an event for ribbon cutting for another 900 feet of the Riverwalk by Seabright Dam. That's not until next month, so I'll be able to inform you about the date and the time and what will be happening at the next meeting. We also talked about Route 1 North, which is where John's information came in helpful because they have scrapped, not that it really applies to us, but again, it sets a tone. They've scrapped a sidewalk, so now they're not proposing a sidewalk
North of
north, so from the state park north to Lincolnville. No sidewalk, but instead of 3-foot shoulders, they'd like 5-foot shoulders to allow additional room for the bikers because that's the primary thing. One thing that was really interesting is apparently when you see a plan for them to take your rock wall, take your trees, take your everything, a lot of that's based on a speed limit. So if they were to drop the speed limit 5 miles an hour,
Take this
they don't take as much, which was news to me and pretty interesting stuff, especially, you know, the Laritas are a prime example. They've got this beautiful stone wall with beautiful trees that keeps them buffered. Virtually all that would be gone. But if you drop it 5 miles an hour, all of a sudden everything stays. So it's interesting stuff. The rec
Which
committee.
means that they would only be traveling at 55 miles an hour up there instead of 60 miles an hour.
Right. Right,
In the
which
50
is not the
in the
posted
50 zone.
speed limit. Yeah. But yeah, if it was to be reduced from 50 to
I could be
45,
convinced to
it,
drop it 5.
it keeps people's trees and et cetera, et cetera.
Oh, yeah.
The Recreation Committee, they reached out to Sports Fields of Maine to get quotes. We're using those quotes to build out what exactly we want done. I've been talking with Rick. Rick's been talking with the chair about the process the proper process that we have to go through to put it out to public bid. But we're utilizing this quote.
Yeah, we don't need to bid it, we can just get price quotes, which is a
Right.
little easier.
Yes, yeah. But we're using that to build out, because a lot of the things were some relatively high ticket items for ongoing maintenance. 2017, fall of 2017. Rick and I have been talking a little bit about what would that look like if we could do some of those things internally. We don't have any sort of plan, but we've thrown around some ideas of the possibility of having some of those costs be town costs, which would actually reduce the amount we would have to pay for it. So in the not too distant future, things will be coming to Rick anyway for approval. We elected officers, which is awesome. We actually have minutes because we have a secretary now. So we have a chair, a vice chair, and a secretary, which is great. We discussed that bidding process and also timelines for it. Capital improvements, when do I start getting information to get myself prepped for when we have these meetings?
We're not gonna be coming to the board, I don't think, we'll be until October is the plan. We're still.
And I'm only asking as the liaison to this committee,
Right.
am I involved before that process?
No,
When do I
it'll
start
come to
getting
the-
information?
It'll come to the board first.
Okay.
It'll come, it's gotta come, Megan's still gathering that information now, and then comes to me and Megan and the department heads, and then we'll move it to you guys.
And then I'll take the packet and start working with the committee. Okay,
You have plenty of time.
great. After November 8th, I hope.
Jeff?
Can I
Uh,
finish one thing? I forgot
Oh,
one
yeah.
one thing, which is that Gartley and Dorsey brought it to our attention that if we had a town watershed management plan, we would be theoretically eligible for grant funding from the state to help fund some of these remediation efforts.
Jamie wasn't at that meeting?
Jamie was there.
This morning?
Yeah.
What's the
I
process?
thought he was on vacation today,
He was, but he had his father-in-law or stepfather and his daughter were there too.
oh, okay.
Truly
His
a
daughter's
public
gonna be
meeting.
very, very well educated in
Yeah.
The sewer plant
the ins
last.
and outs
So,
of.
so my question was, let's say we all thought that was a fabulous idea.
How fast could we do it?
Who does it? Does
Well,
the
what's it
Conservation
gonna
Commission
cost?
do it?
Yeah.
I mean, who?
Yeah.
And if we did it, my understanding is Camden has some of the same problems at Lake Beach that we have at Goodies Beach. And would we want to try and?
They got smoking raccoons too?
Yeah, I think they also have smoking raccoons. Is it crazy to try and do it together to try and shoulder the burden, or does that make sense?
Probably depends on how much it's gonna cost.
And this is
You
the kind
will-
of
I
thing
think-
you
I think-
engage a professional to do. Is
Right,
that
and I.
to draft this.
I think there's a good chance that the cost might, because a lot of it's gonna be boilerplate. And then some of it will be enumeration of various watersheds, et cetera.
Sounds like a two-town agenda item.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know any of the particulars.
Can you talk to Gartley and Dorsey, Rick, and find out at least the basics of where would we start? How would we start? Does that make sense?
I mean, what this sounded to me like is like, you know, if you have like land and tree growth management, then you get like you know,
Yeah.
tax abatement. It sounded like that kind of thing.
Yeah,
But I don't know who writes these things, or
I don't either.
you know,
I like the two towns because it's such a scourge on both of our towns, and we're so close that maybe doing it together does.
Well, my
Not having
thinking,
them as a scourge, is that what you're saying?
Well, that we're number one and number two in the
Problems
most
of the
scenic
Yeah.
area in Maine, arguably, and our beaches are
and
completely
my thinking
polluted.
is also that, my understanding is that we are part of Camden's biggest problem, in terms of the way in which the DEP sort of communicated with them where the water flow comes from, where that fresh water flow comes from.
Into the sewer?
The I don't think so.
No, the inflow.
So-
They communicated to us because of an issue they saw with the
Yeah.
wastewater treatment plant.
Right at the-
Just to communicate to us to make sure that we knew that there was something was going on.
Okay, the way I read that was that
Oh.
they
Well,
were,
they said
they were
they-
putting us on notice.
They were
that
putting us
this
on
was
notice
gonna-
that Camden might have a problem, therefore we might have a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It could be a financial problem for us.
Yeah,
Well,
but
they come-
also that they didn't have, but they were interested to look at the proportional contributions of, and the presumption I took from that was that you guys are gonna start paying your fair share.
Well,
Which we probably should be doing,
I mean,
but,
yeah, oh, you mean from the meeting the other week?
yeah.
Our sewer system is way newer than theirs. And yeah, I'm sure we have some I, but I don't think we have anywhere near the amount that they do.
Yeah.
And with the new pump station and the metering that they have, they can track how much are flowing into the
Yeah,
station.
That makes
Yeah.
sense.
They can
Yeah.
track it, but I don't think it's gonna be
No, I
what
don't
they
think we're
think
gonna
it is,
find any
not near
surprises.
what Camden's is.
So anyway, I was just thinking that since we're probably going to be asking them for a bit of a favor to help us with this pilot project and figure out, maybe sharing, or offering to share the watershed management plan effort would help.
If it benefits both towns, then we can get it done together cheaper than.
And I don't understand the layout of the watershed, but my guess is that.
Well,
it
some of what-
doesn't go at a town line.
Much of the area that Bob Kennedy has already initiated, that much of that Goose River watershed is in Camden.
Right.
So
So
he's already
it-
done some of it.
Right. It doesn't stop at the
I
town
would think
line.
that the GIS people in Knox County would help with that too, with all the, because it's got to include
No,
topographic.
okay.
Letitia?
Yeah, let's keep that in mind and see what we come up with. One thing I forgot to mention, the Budget Committee held their organization meeting this afternoon. Jan is the chair again, and Tom Murphy is the vice chair on the Budget Committee.
What are you?
I am a person who is on the committee.
Yes. He's a person of interest. Ken, did you have any others to report?
No, I'm done.
Jeff? Jeff's got nothing either. Well,
I got one last quickie.
Thought we were out of here.
I know.
Thought we were out.
Could have, I had a moment.
But it applies.
He always has one more thing.
I know.
Oh, I've got like 20 more,
I know.
but I'm only doing one.
We're gonna call him the
So-
the Columbo of the
Yes.
select
So
board.
Yeah.
I got,
He was
and
elected, though, we can't remove him.
obviously I'm campaigning, so time blocks of my day are committed to going around the town and talking to people. So it is a little more convenient for me. When I got an email from, as you all did, from Richard Anderson about their concerns with the library, I knew I hadn't been paying as much attention to the library as I should. These people have concerns. I may disagree with you on them, but I'd like to hear your concerns. So I stopped in. He wasn't there. Went and spent some time talking with Jim Ruddy. What was interesting was during the course of our conversation, Jim brought it to my attention that I am the only person that ever stops in to talk with that group and or him personally. And that's not anything to say about you all, but the amount of goodwill that one can generate by approaching people that they disagree with and saying, look, and I told him, he kept saying, nobody likes this design, nobody, and finally I was like, look, I like this design, I like every bit of it. I just wanted to hear your concerns. I don't agree with you, but I want to hear your concerns. And it builds really goodwill. So just throwing it out there that if you happen to find some time, stopping in and talking with those folks really builds a better bond and connection. And I'm done now.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Move seconded, all in favor? We're out.
I kind of want.